to bring you live coverage from both sides of the frontier. We look back at last night when the provisional implementation at the border came into force. And we'll hear from you, voices from the public, on this new era in cross-border relations. It's been an extraordinary 24 hours for Gibraltar, from the signing of the UK-EU treaty in Brussels to the scenes at the frontier last night as the new arrangements came into effect. And the ceremonial aspect of the implementation of the treaty continues throughout the day today. At midday, Pedro Sánchez will become the first Spanish Prime Minister to approach the frontier gate since the implementation of the treaty. He's expected to meet with the Chief Minister, Fabian Picardo, who is meeting with his cabinet just across the border at the airport Wessex Lounge. I'm joined on set by senior broadcast journalist Rosa Stengo, who has been guiding viewers and listeners throughout every development. You've been a very busy lady in the last couple of days. Thank you so much, Ros, for joining me.
We all have. Yeah, you mentioned last night it was a little bit crazy. It was a bit like a champagne cork popping. After that initial pop, it did sort of calm down a little bit, and a lot of reports we had from on the ground, from our reporters, but also from the RGP, that it was actually very peaceful and very friendly. And I consider today day one. It's the first day where the frontier is open and workers are coming in, and actually it was quite sobering watching the cameras that we had at the frontier this morning to see it was very peaceful. People were just coming in, the cars, the people were coming in without any checks. So that was very nice to watch. Now, you mentioned today that the cabinet is meeting at the Wessex Lounge. They are indeed, and we know Pedro Sánchez is coming over. There's been an advisory for the traffic that's been issued. It says that there are ceremonial events at the frontier to do with the UK-EU treaty. That's between 11 and 1 o'clock. During this period, enhanced security measures will be operating both at the approaches to as well as within both sides of the border area. Members of the public are therefore advised, where possible, to avoid both pedestrian and vehicular entry to and exit from Gibraltar during these times, as delays and disruption may be experienced. Commercial traffic will not be affected and will continue to operate as normal. The government apologies for the inconvenience, but obviously this is due to the ceremonial events taking place at the frontier. Also, I should also mention that there is increased security at the beaches. We've had a press release saying, as part of increased security arrangements, the government wishes to announce that the beach cameras will now operate for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week throughout the year. They will also have the ability for night vision. Additionally, cameras will be installed at Roja Bay and motion-sensitive lighting will be provided. So that will give a lot of reassurance, I think, to people who are living in the area. I don't know if you remember, Kelly, but in 2018 we ran a story saying that there was a call for those webcams that were installed at the beaches to be operational for 24 hours, but the government had said at that point, for data protection reasons, it couldn't. Well, that obviously has been resolved now, but they were anyway other powerful cameras, presumably from on top of the rock, that were capturing that area anyway. But now, extra security that will come as a huge, I think, relief to people living in the area, and those security measures at the frontier between 11 and 1 today.
Now, we have also been asking for the public's opinion yesterday when we were live on air around this time, Ros. A lot of the comments were quite worried, quite cynical, quite negative. We have since heard some listeners urging optimism. Mark said negotiations always involve compromise, and he believes Gibraltar's British identity will endure through future generations. Tobias argued the argument should be judged against the alternative of a no deal rather than the current interim arrangements, saying he remains cautious but believes people should give it a chance.
Yes, similar messages here. Paul described the agreement as a new beginning, saying closer cooperation would benefit both sides of the bay. Jane simply said she was feeling optimistic about Gibraltar's future, and others were more critical. John questioned the timing of the signing, suggesting it should not have coincided with the World Cup. Derek expressed concern that Gibraltar had been sold to Spain and asked what role the Royal Gibraltar Police would have under the new arrangements.
Now, Ros, as you mentioned, one of the key events today is, of course, the expected visit by Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez and Foreign Minister José Manuel Álvarez. Of course, we'll be bringing live coverage throughout the next few hours. But what do we know about those plans so far?
Very little. My understanding is that Pedro Sanchez is likely to make a speech at the frontier. We know that the cabinet are based at the Wessex Lounge, so clearly they will be meeting Pedro Sanchez at the frontier. I think we might see something symbolic to do with a gate, but let's wait and see what happens as that unfolds live. We'll obviously be going to our cameras at the frontier for that. So no, this is the Spanish. This is the Spanish marking of today's event. I suppose and actually, there they are. They're just arriving there. We can see the Chief Minister and his cabinet. So I imagine Pedro Sanchez should be arriving pretty soon.
We are live on both Radio Gibraltar and GBC television. Those images coming in now of the Chief Minister and his cabinet approaching the airport.
They were obviously all there last night. There was a party on the roof of the airport, and VIPs and the cabinet politicians were there to see in the new year. We did interview them, actually, with all, the hordes of Spaniards, but they were very optimistic and, nonplussed by the fact that Spaniards were shouting out those slogans with their flags. And the Chief Minister said, look, it's about frontier fluidity. That's all it's about. And he said, we beat Brexit. We beat Franco, actually, because Franco wanted those checks at the frontier. We have now removed them because the gate only went up in 1908. So we've now gone back to the pre-Franco era of a free-flowing frontier. So the cabinet were quite nonplussed about it last night.
Quite emotional as well. The Chief Minister mentioned to Christine Vasquez that he'd run out of tears by that point, just moments after the fence had been pulled down by himself and the former Chief Ministers. What a moment that was.
And in fact, I've been speaking to people who had grandparents who lived through the frontier era, grandparents who lost contact with their family on the other side of the frontier and how difficult it was for them. And I think that brought back a lot of emotions last night. And, a lot of those people aren't here anymore, which is sad that they're not here to actually see what we are seeing today. But
we will actually be hearing a little later on from 101-year-old Maribel Shakaluga, who was there this morning. We managed to get an interview with her.
Oh, that will be amazing.
Yeah, so we will be seeing that at some point. I imagine there hasn't been much sleep for the Chief Minister and his team. Yeah. We were live on Radio Gibraltar's breakfast show, also on TV this morning once again with Stefan and Robin, and we had Claire Nandis reporting for us from the frontier, and she was speaking to commuters. Everything seemed very positive. Spirits were high.
Yes, he looked quite fresh. I mean, he must be one of these people that runs on adrenaline and doesn't need to sleep very much, because he did look actually quite refreshed. But he seemed very satisfied with the scenes that he saw this morning, and it was heartening to see people coming into work, driving in, walking in without having to show their documents, with no delays. And that was nice, because that's what this has been about. And I know it's a difficult thing for many people to get their head around, particularly with all the history that is there. But whether we like it or not, this is where we are. The treaty has been signed. It's a legal document. It's there in place now at least for 4 years. We do have those termination triggers, as Spain has a limited termination trigger. Ours is broader. But, of course, we also saw in that letter from Stephen Doughty explaining the clause in the letter, in the Concordat, that says that the UK will retain control over those levers only in exceptional circumstances. So, but that's to do with their constitutional role. They have a constitutional, the sovereign head of state in Britain is the same as ours. So I don't think we're ever going to disconnect from that. But certainly from the politicians that we've seen, it has been a very optimistic. And the RGP last night as well, they put out on social media.
Thank you, Ros.
I believe very positive,
Yes. I believe we're going live now to the border to find out the latest from our news editor, Christine Vasquez.
Yes, we're here at the frontier and it's all starting to happen. We can see the cabinet. We saw those images of them coming to the frontier, and we know that there's going to be another ceremonial event here involving the gates. This time, I think last night it was the actual fence, and this time it's the gates. We are not very sure what sort of contact Gibraltar will have with the Spanish Premier, Pedro Sanchez. We understand the Spanish Foreign Minister will be here as well, José Manuel Álvarez. And we have to understand, I've just been picking up on a couple of things that you guys have been talking about, and the global crisis, you know, the Middle East crisis. It's very important to have a secretary, a head of state here like Pedro Sanchez. Security is absolutely insane. So there are snipers on some of the roofs. There's the Guardia Civil, there's the Policía, very coordinated, very high security in Gibraltar as well. I think probably Gibraltar owes Spain some sort of reassurance that we can protect as well, that we can step up to the mark. So it is very, very highly, very, very tight security here. Last night there was a word surreal. Everybody kept saying it was surreal. It still feels surreal. We thought today would be the first day of normality. Today is not normality. I think the dust still has to settle, because the number of press, the number of people coming just to see what's happening, they've heard it on the news perhaps, and the number of innocent bystanders who are asking us, what's happening? You know, why is there so much security? Why are there so many people? So today is perhaps not quite the first day of normality. We'll have to wait a bit more for that. And we'll start seeing demolition works as well. We've seen the area being cleared up, but it's only for day 1 and 2. There's still a lot more work to be done at the frontier, and this ceremony today will mark the start of more to come.
Thank you very much. Christine Vasquez reporting live from the frontier. Plenty of activity again in the north of Gibraltar. Ian Tri-Clarence joins us live now from the Spanish side of the frontier.
Hi, Kelly. As we've heard, the security is the utmost priority here. The organisers of this event have kept the specific details of Pedro Sanchez's visit very close to their chest until the last minute. From what we understand, Pedro Sanchez will be arriving as if he were entering Gibraltar through the normal vehicular route. He's going to what is a fenced-off area inside La Aduana, which is, as I've just said, fenced off, where our reporter Kevin Ruiz is currently with one of our cameramen. We're not allowed, none of the press are allowed to transmit live from that event, which is why I'm here from our very handy vantage point above the frontier. There are hundreds of people lining the streets. They are very, very heavily armed. Policía Nacional, Guardia Civil, and as we've seen, a few scattered across the rooftops. Security is of the utmost priority. We have been given much information, but as we've heard, we are expecting Pedro Sanchez to address visiting dignitaries inside the customs area before making a ceremonial gesture. We understand he is going to be crossing the border into Gibraltar to meet with the Chief Minister. We're told he's going to be arriving within the next 15 to 20 minutes. The address is due to begin at 12 o'clock, and Kevin Ruiz will be bringing us the latest from there. As soon as he is given the all clear, they are going to wait until Pedro Sanchez has left the area, and then reporters will be allowed to report on what they've seen. Until then, we'll keep an eye on things. No disruptions. We've had one very eager and energetic chap running up and down El Potaje, apparently they're calling him, with a Spanish flag. There were murmurs, there were rumours that Vox might have been planning a protest. We've heard that from reporters on the Spanish side and from security. Nothing's happened as of yet, but they do have a tendency to turn up at the last minute, we're told, so as to avoid detection. Until then, we'll be keeping an eye out and bring you the latest if there are any developments.
Thank you very much. Ian Tri-Clarence reporting live from La Línea. And well, Europe is back, exclaimed the Chief Minister last night as the new arrangements at the frontier were implemented at midnight last night. Fabian Picardo asked the collector of customs to stand his officers down, then greeted La Línea Mayor Juan Franco across the border. Together with all former Chief Ministers, they stood on the Gibraltar side as the European anthem Ode to Joy was played.
Chief Minister, it's been a very emotional day, hasn't it?
I've run out of tears. For the first time in 15 years in politics, I've run out of tears. This is an emotional day, but now that I have crossed the frontier without a passport and without an ID card, I believe that we have done it. And I've heard ode to joy. Customs and the BCA have withdrawn. We've done it. Europe is back. We have an association with Schengen. We can now move freely, and we have cheated the worst effects of Brexit.
Well, Chief Minister, all is not rosy because we've had to pull our reporter from the other side because it's not a great ambiente after the football. There's a lot of gibraltareñas.
Well, gibraltareñas may be what people say, but it'll never happen. I don't think even they believe it. And look, they can say that. But what matters here is that we have a treaty that is going to enable us, on days when the football is good or when the football is bad, to deliver for our people what we needed, which is to avoid the worst effects of Brexit. Thank you very much, in particular, for the coverage that you have done this day so that everybody in Gibraltar has been able to see what has been happening in Brussels and here.
And the Spanish Foreign Minister, José Manuel Álvarez, has described this as a new era in relations between the UK and the EU. He was speaking in Brussels following the signing of the treaty.
Acabamos de firmar el histórico acuerdo respecto a Gibraltar, que abre una nueva era para las relaciones entre el campo de Gibraltar y Gibraltar. Una nueva era en la relación bilateral entre España y el Reino Unido y que cierra definitivamente el Brexit, la última pieza que faltaba, y que abre también una nueva era de relación entre la Unión Europea y el Reino Unido.
The Minister for Europe has written to the Chief Minister offering additional assurances on the Concordat, which was signed and published yesterday. The agreement between the Gibraltar and UK government sets out conditions for terminating the treaty. Stephen Doughty's letter mainly focuses on the phrase which says the UK government will not, other than in most exceptional circumstances, do certain things contrary to the wishes of Gibraltar.
Stephen Doughty's letter to the Chief Minister includes an explanation of the phrase "other than in the most exceptional circumstances" contained in the Concordat. He says this reflects the shared understanding that, in relation to the exercise of powers within the treaty, the UK government would follow the democratically expressed wishes of Gibraltar and would not do or omit to do anything contrary to the wishes in all but truly exceptional circumstances. He says this is intended to set an extremely high threshold and is consistent with the principle that there should be nothing about Gibraltar without Gibraltar, while also recognising the UK's constitutional responsibilities. The Europe Minister says he considers it would only be in the most extreme cases, such as where there was grave impact on the UK's essential interests, that they would take such action. Quite frankly, he says, he considers it inconceivable that such circumstances would ever arise. Stephen Doughty adds he hopes this gives the additional reassurances Mr. Picardo has sought. He ends his letter saying he would welcome a structured discussion between both governments on any issues that either side considers would merit further consideration in light of the new treaty framework to ensure it operates effectively.
After the border was opened, the mayor of La Línea, Juan Franco, said he never thought he would witness this moment, adding he believed the gate did nothing but separate two towns who counted on each other. Mr. Franco said the closure of the border between 1969 and 1982 was best left in the past, as both La Línea and Gibraltar look forward to a prosperous future.
Yo pensaba que esto nunca íbamos a verlo. Creo que esta verja, con todo lo que lleva aparejado, lo que ha hecho ha sido separar a dos pueblos hermanos y no nos vamos a acordar de lo que pasó desde el 69 hasta el 82 porque es mejor olvidarlo. Y bueno, creo que hoy damos un salto a la historia. Estoy seguro que hacia adelante y en nuestra ciudad pues esto puede servir como un incentivo para seguir creciendo y seguir penetrando nuestra economía con la de Gibraltar, en buen sentido, y que entre todos consigamos esa zona de prosperidad compartida de la que tanto se ha hablado. Yo creo que la realidad la vamos a empezar a vivir a partir de septiembre. Ten en cuenta que ahora mismo el tráfico está cortado prácticamente desde ahí, porque está el recinto ferial. El día 28 de julio más o menos se desmantela y después pues, vendrán una cantidad de curiosos enorme a ver esto de entrar en Gibraltar sin pasaporte, sin DNI como es. También habrá más flujo para el lado nuestro y a partir de septiembre, cuando un poco pase las vacaciones de verano y demás, creo que todo se estabilizará y a partir partir de ese momento es cuando le tomaremos el pulso a la realidad. Esperemos que sea para bien.
And as GBC brings you live coverage throughout the morning and afternoon, we'd like to keep hearing from you. As a new chapter begins for Gibraltar, how are you feeling? Are you optimistic, concerned, emotional, or simply taking it all in? We'd love for you to be part of the conversation. You can call us or send us a WhatsApp message on 200 66200, and a member of our team will be happy to hear from you. Now, Katie Docker has been in town for some feedback. She first spoke to someone who was at the frontier last night.
I cried. I even saw the Chief Minister. I gave him a massive thank you for everything that he's done. Honestly, I don't think any other person could have done this over the past few years. I think it has to have been really tactful for him. So honestly, massive thank you to him.
And what did it feel like being there with the crowds? Was it exciting? Was it nerve-wracking?
Emotional, nerve-wracking, exciting, a bit of everything. I mean, we were part of history. It was just going through my head all the time how, the generation that went through the evacuation, the generation that went through the closure of the frontier, and now it's our turn to go through this. So it was amazing just feeling that you were part of something this massive. Honestly, it was incredible.
Yes, I watched it last night. I think it's a shame because a lot of Spanish people who are obviously people who work here and have family here were respectful and said, Viva los Llanitos, and I think that was nice. Unfortunately, the timing of the football was terrible, and I think some young people who maybe had drunk a little bit too much did ruin it. And yeah, the whole gibraltareñas thing is getting a bit old, and it's just why try and create tension on the first day of the change. But hopefully it was a one-off. Let's hope the excitement of the football, and hopefully we can move forward with a bit more peace and, just good relationships, no? Let's see.
I thought it was really cool, and it's history for Gibraltar, for the border to be opening. Nice how some of the Spanish people from La Línea came in and started saying Viva los Llanitos. So it was a cool celebration.
To be honest, I'm very, very affected by it because even though it's a good thing, we don't know how it's going to end up. And last night it was just for starters, they came in and they started making a bit of commotion and noise, saying Gibraltar español underneath by our blocks. So I don't think they've started very well, to be honest.
My thoughts are, I don't really like this agreement. I think we are going to be as safe as we used to be. And you could just see the reaction of the Spanish people coming in with Spanish flags, even with reporter Ruiz, people hassling him. And so I think it was a bit shameful. And I don't foresee a very good future for the youngsters, especially.
See, but obviously I think for much, but I think it's a good thing. But I just hope that the safety for the children, for me, that's sort of my main priority.
Happiness only. I had no interpretations. I had no fears for the future. I just think it's all really positive.
Right now, I'm not quite sure what my thoughts are, but I think there's going to be a bit more trouble with people coming in, with people leaving Gibraltar. I don't know. I prefer it's more before than it is now. Because before we had more control, like if someone went to Spain, the police can check the passport before letting the other person through, whilst now I don't know what's going to happen.
So your concern is over safety?
Yes.
I know I've got some friends that hate the idea of the fact that they see it as a step backwards. I think it's a step forward. I think it should be, I hope it is, good economically for Gibraltar. But with regards to our culture, our identity as a people, I think instead of studying the Battle of Hastings and World War II in schools in Gibraltar, we should start to study the Gibraltar history, where we come from, where we've been, where we're going. I think we owe it to our ancestors. I think we owe it to generations that suffered during the Franco era. And it's all a little bit surreal at the moment.
I'm very positive, actually. I feel it's a great, we've pulled something out of the bag which was extremely difficult to achieve, so congratulations to the team for doing that. I have faith in our resilience, in our adaptability, in our entrepreneurship to make the best of this. It'll take a little bit of time. I think in the short term, probably there'll be a slight net benefit towards Spain as we flock there even more. But I think in the medium to longer term, Gibraltar will come up trumps, and this will be a tremendous opportunity.
So we've been in town here on Main Street this morning to find out how people are feeling after last night's momentous events. A real mix of opinions, some feeling a bit more negative, they didn't want to come out on camera, some people feeling very hopeful and very positive for the future. Some, let's see what happens. Yep, a real mix this morning here in town.
Thank you for sharing your opinions. Ros Duncan, he was there last night. He said, unexplainable experience. Yes, there were certain individuals who commented Gibraltar español, but it was mainly joy, he said. Everyone shaking hands saying vecino. It was emotional.
Yeah, I've just had a few messages coming in. Concerned, emotional, not happy at all, sad. That's from Jenny. But Alfred says, I think that we must move forward with the times and we must all embrace this with an open mind.
Now, we are receiving reports that there are some issues at the airport with EES. We will be trying to find out more with Cristina Cortés, who is going to be reporting
and now
live
that
from
is
the
a
airport.
Schengen-wide issue. The EES gates are causing problems all over Europe, so it's not completely unexpected, I think, that we might be having some... We've had 2 flights come in this morning from Manchester and Heathrow, so that's probably why they are experiencing... We'll be going over to Christina
Yes, as soon as
shortly.
we can. Yeah. And as Gibraltar enters this new chapter following the signing and implementation of the UK-EU treaty, many of those who've helped shape the ROC's relationship with the United Kingdom have been reflecting on what this moment means. Dominic Searle served as the Gibraltar government's representative to the UK for a decade, from 2015 to 2025, having previously spent almost 20 years as editor of the Gibraltar Chronicle. He joins us now to reflect on this historic moment and what comes next. Thank you so much for joining us today. Dominic, you've watched Gibraltar's political story unfold from 2 very unique perspectives. First as editor of the Chronicle, of course, and as Gibraltar's representative to the UK. How significant is today for you?
I think it's a huge achievement on the part of the government. I mean, you have to go back and see in blunt terms what happened. David Cameron basically called a referendum which should never have been called, caused huge damage to us and to the UK, in my view, as well. And we had to live with that. And although we've been dealing, in a sense, largely in the public arena with a sort of deal or no deal, I think the truth of it, there was always the old-fashioned fudge as well that would also have been messy. So it's been quite brave of the government, I think, to get into this and to try and come up with a solution that works for the economy particularly and for people in the long term, and is a positive direction rather than a negative direction. I think those of us who lived... I remember being down at the border with Buck Oliver when the border opened in 1985, and that was a massively emotional moment because everyone had been locked in this cage, for 16 years. This is slightly different. I mean, people, in the sense the fluidity has been there. I suspect that some of the traffic will compensate for the fluidity, so we're going to have more natural blockages. I think that what happens psychologically...
Well, we saw that even this morning. The Chief Minister said there is still traffic. It is still building up, but just because of the amount of people coming through.
Psychologically, if you're in a queue, if it's been caused deliberately, you feel really bad about it. Otherwise, you sort of surrender.
It's easier to accept.
I think, in a sense, where I see where we are, it's almost like these great escape stories. So we've been in sort of castle Brexit, and there's been an ingenious escape, and we're suddenly out there, and there's a forest on one side and deep blue sea on the other, and that's our future. This is not the end, in my view, of that journey, but it is the best rock from which to walk forward from. And I think that's what's been achieved against a lot of negatives. Obviously, I have the same worries as many Gibraltarians. I think most Gibraltarians, in my view, I used to call them the Chronicle readers when they were my readers, but I think they're people who are just holding their breath to see and to give the chance for this to work. I suspect that if we can make it work for the campo, it will work in return for us, and that will create a barrier that will defend us a little bit from the changes that will come in Spanish politics. My deepest concern would be the changes in Spanish politics.
I think the biggest thing, though, is to ensure that we have the British support there. I mean, there was, looking back over the Brexit period, there was a period where, some people, not everyone, the Chief Minister never thought that Gibraltar would ever be made a pawn in their own negotiation for a Brexit deal, but there was that risk there. I mean, Sir Peter Caruana said, we did negotiate our own Brexit deal, post-Brexit deal, from a position of weakness. I mean, did you always have faith? I mean, your job was a diplomat, really, in the UK representing Gibraltar, but did you ever have concerns that the UK would not be there for Gibraltar at its time of need?
Whilst now we're sort of trumpeting a positive big story, and I can see people were making an effort to be out there, my role from very early on was actually to try and keep us out of the news. People always want to be in the news, but it's rarely good, in that sense. And the prime objective, I think, one of them was not to get conflated with the Irish issue, with the Northern Irish issue. I think the Irish government and other governments were just as keen for that not to happen. For us, we avoided being that football. I think what really happened was that a huge effort would go in one direction, and then the government would change, or the Prime Minister would change, and so forth. So it's a continuous working relationship. I've got to admit, I'm not a huge Burnham fan. I say that as a sort of person who votes not from the Gibraltar perspective, but we have to work on the new government in Labour now very, very hard, because he is going to be out trying to claw money from all over the place. He is trying to prove himself to a very sceptical
Where does he stand on Gibraltar?
Well, I don't think Gibraltar is a big issue. It has been on his radar. He has been the Mayor of Manchester. He has seen himself as the Prime Minister, and everybody pushed him up there, and now I can imagine the UK press will spend a lot of time pulling him down again.
You said a change in Spanish government is your biggest concern, but surely that also must be raising alarm bells for you.
No, because I think the cross-party view of Gibraltar is always very positive, and deep down I think none of them really want to do anything negative. Even Farage, where you can worry a little bit about the way they think. The problem with some people is that they think that talking about the Union Jack and being British is everything, and what you have to have is your Britishness, but you also have to have an economy, and you have to have good relations, and you have to build on that, and that's what, in a sense, the government here has been doing, and whoever's in the next government will have to do, and it will be a continuous job. This is not going to be easy. It's going to be very positive on the sort of, I think, challenges financially for some people, but huge opportunities for others. I think a lot of people will feel the relax of the moment, but after a while you have to start measuring up, well, who are you in Gibraltar anymore? And it's not just the politics. If you look at what's happened in places like Venice and Florence and all that, what do you do if you have so many people coming in easily? Where do you want them? Are we going to become a sort of, Disneyland?
There's a lot of work still to come, isn't there?
There's a lot of challenges.
Yeah, we were talking earlier on about all the traffic that was coming in from the frontier, and where are they going to go? Where are they going to park? And we still haven't seen that infrastructure. I think it's almost as though the government has spent so much time negotiating and getting this treaty off the ground that perhaps they've not been able to dedicate as much time to.
I think I'd be slightly more cynical on that. I think actually, I remember writing editorials 20 years ago about having gone on holiday to Oxford about the park and ride and how that could work. A park and ride would work now. It didn't work before because basically businesses wanted people to drive in and put their tobacco in the back of their car or their perfume in their car or whatever it was. So being frank about it, I think we've eliminated that world.
Yeah.
And right now, the ideal thing would be very much like that. You park your car in La Linea, wherever it is, and you get your ticket for your bus and you come into town. That would be the ideal thing.
Yeah, so probably some big changes to come. Certainly the redesigning of the frontier area, that's probably going to be the next big project. We saw the designs of that. The park and ride has been mooted, so hopefully that will come in. And I suppose, we just have to wait and see what happens and how things develop.
I wouldn't, there's been a lot of work over a long time and a lot of, in a sense, investment that has paid off. The tunnel now is gold. You imagine that tunnel wasn't there now. After all the problems that we had, it was, it's like building the pyramids almost, but it's there.
Yeah.
So there's a lot going on, and in fairness to the civil service, they really are moving around and trying to adapt to what's happening. I know that people will always complain about something, but go and live in London for a while and you won't complain.
Sorry, if I can just squeeze in another question, because, with Dominic and your knowledge of UK, the Foreign Office and all the politicians there, that you mentioned the change of foreign secretaries and Minister for Europe and Prime Ministers. There's too many to go through. Has that had an effect, do you think?
It has. I think the most positive thing that happened in that story, because I think we could, you can almost say that Conservatives or Tories, you can generally rely on them on the Gibraltar issue. Labour had a sort of checkered history, and I think our investment in Labour people before they came into power, Stephen Doughty came out several times, even with his father privately, before he became Europe Minister. Those were important investments to get people on side. The trouble with, I think, with parties like Labour is you'll be watching all the time for someone who's just maybe not interested, or, you know, like McDonnell said at the time, you know, it's just another pink bit, you know, get rid of it, or direct rule, or this kind of thing. So I don't think that's on the cards, because I think actually we've, for the moment, solved a problem. So at the moment, the last thing they want is a new one.
What about on the Spanish side, though? You know, we know Pedro Sanchez's position is not very secure. The far right is pushing ever more stronger into power in the... We've heard that Vox was potentially going to have a demonstration at the frontier. They're growing in support.
Yeah, well, as I say, I think, one, making this work for both sides of the border will prevent a lot of issues in the local area. Already has, I think, to a great extent. And I think, you know, if just a Pepe government came in, you've got to look at the fact that Spain is a massive beneficiary from the relationship with the UK. I mean, it's visitors. There's 400,000 Brits legally living in Spain. There's a massive purchase from Spain into the UK economy. So those sorts of factors, I mean, the PP might try and squeeze that a bit more, but I don't see the PP in its own right. What you could have is if a Vox government came in and I think was sort of irrationally made Gibraltar an issue, that could get a bit itchy. But, you know, I think otherwise it's the long term that we have to think about. Where exactly are we going from here? But this is, you know, as I say, this is a solid rock from which to take a view, but we can't just stop thinking. You know, that's not an option.
Well, we have been welcoming comments from the public, and, you know, the agreement has attracted, as you can imagine, both praise and criticism. A lot of concerns still being raised. What would you say to those who still have reservations and real fears about the future?
Look, I think we've gone through much bigger challenges before. This is the first time there's an ejector button to this agreement. It's not said a lot, but it is there. There's an option out. The option out wouldn't be very pretty, but it's there. It's real. So I think it's just about making sure that our politicians are conscious of, you know, the way in which we as Gibraltarians want to live. And, you know, I can see, for instance, they put the telephone boxes down at the frontier. That gives a nice barrier to the Spaniards coming in. I don't need that, and most Gibraltarians don't need that to tell them that they're British.
Not them, though, but visitors.
Yeah,
you're
exactly.
leaving Spain and you're going into Gibraltar.
But visitors is fine. We've always welcomed a lot of visitors. You know, you think about the fact that since the border opened in '85, how many incidents with Spaniards have we had? In Estrillas, a couple. It's not such a big problem with the Spaniards. It may be a problem if we don't keep our guard up and you get, you know, an odd group coming in or whatever it is. But Gibraltarians are, you know, I think, have their eyes open. I think the long term, it's about making sure that the government delivers on protecting our core cultural interests.
Shall we have a look at some other messages? I've got a message from John. Many people are not happy with the removal of the border, but what choice did we have? This is the lesser of the two evils, and we need to embrace this change. We need to adapt. Let's give it time. It was either this or a hard border with major repercussions. Our economy, our quality of life and future prospects would have been heavily impacted. And that's from John.
David welcomes the treaty overall and praised the government's efforts, but he also expressed disappointment with the UK's handling of Gibraltar. He said the day had prompted him to remember those who endured and fought through the years of the closed frontier. We also heard from Heidi, who was there last night. She said it was bittersweet, unexplainable. She said that they were all singing Gib national anthem, Y llévame donde nací. But she says just after midnight she had this uncertainty and felt somewhat scared with, of course, some of the individuals in the area with flags and inappropriate comments, chants of gibraltar español. So she says at that moment it hit her what had really happened.
Well, Moira says, I am one of those people who has lived through the closure and the rest of things. I am happy that the treaty has now been implemented, and truthfully I do have my fears. There will always be those like last night that will be calling out for Gibraltar Español chant. And like I always say, it's the same dog with a different collar. But having said this, I do pray and hope for the best of things for both sides. And I hope that in time, Gibraltar's identity is not lost.
And you can keep those comments coming. We are live on GBC Television and Radio Gibraltar. 200 66 200 is a number to call or WhatsApp us on, and one of our team members will be taking those for us.
OK, I've got a message from Kevin, who's at the frontier. He says he's on the Spanish side. We've been asked to sit down for Pedro Sanchez for his address, although there is a slight delay. He says we understand he landed in Malaga a little after 11 and is about to arrive in La Línea. We will walk into the frontier area, greet the mayors, and he will walk into the frontier area, greet mayors and guests, and that will culminate with his address. Not sure about the exchange with Fabian Picardo, but they are there ready. So we will see what happens.
It's still unclear whether he'll be crossing the frontier or whether the ceremony will be on the Spanish side of the frontier.
Yes, Kevin says he's already in La Línea, they believe, and he is turning into the main avenida. So he is very, very close to the frontier now. And we can see there all the Guardia Civil. Can you imagine the heightened frontier, the security? And correct me if I'm wrong, Dominic, but is this the first time a Spanish premier has arrived at the frontier?
Well, they've stopped on the other side of the border, I think. But,
yeah,
but not
we don't know if we don't know if
no.
Pedro Sanchez is going to come into Gibraltar, but he will be at the frontier. Has there been another Spanish premier that has?
Not right into up to the gate now.
Yeah.
So I think they've looked at it from a distance. I think we've had pictures. I think Pedro Sanchez himself might have done that.
Yeah. So this will be a first.
What I was going to say, I think what we always have to remember is that it was the Brits who put the fence up in the first place.
Yes. Well, the Chief Minister mentioned that last night, but he said that was, I think, was that because of Franco or?
Yes, I mean, when they built the airport and they developed, but it was the Brits. The Spaniards have always said that, they used to call it the Garlic Wall, the Brits.
Oh, but they put theirs up first.
Yes, and
that's the thing.
Yes,
they put theirs up first, and that's why, exactly, that's why.
It's a messy story. I think the person who knows it best is Clive Finlayson, who wrote the book all about it. I remember reading it. It's a fascinating book on.
And we do have actually some amazing documentaries that have been made of the closure of the frontier years on GBC's website.
This morning that the gate will be used in a display in some format. We're not sure where exactly, whether it'll be turned into a monument.
Actually, people are asking what's going to happen with it.
The Chief Minister did confirm it will be displayed. In what capacity, we're not sure yet.
I remember seeing in Frank Owens' second-hand shop the original gates, the green ones, that came off from the border when it first opened. So, but I don't know what you do with that. I mean, who's going to fit that in their bedroom?
Yeah. It's been confirmed Pedro Sanchez is definitely not coming into Gibraltar, but he will presumably arrive at the gate. He will remain on the Spanish side. Perhaps it was just one step too much, Dominic Searle, to actually have a Spanish premier on Gibraltar land.
Well, I mean, I suppose all of us have our internal politics, no? So that would be an important, a very significant move. If you remember when Moratinos came over, that was quite an event.
So we can see the Chief Minister moving towards the Spanish side.
The gates, of course, no longer there.
Yeah, I'm trying to orientate myself now.
Without the gates, it's hard.
I know.
They were removed earlier this morning.
I think that the cabinet have remained behind.
It really has been an extraordinary 24 hours for Gibraltar. If you are tuned in on GBC television, we are waiting for the arrival of Pedro Sanchez at the border.
Yeah, we believe he is already in La Línea. Everyone is ready. They've been taking their seats, ready for his address.
And of course, as you mentioned, Roz, high security in the area, as to be expected.
Yeah, we've never seen images like this before. I mean, harking back to the reopening of the frontier, Dominic, how do you compare this, what we're looking at now?
I think it's different. I mean, I see this as a very normal EU thing suddenly happening to Gibraltar that should have happened. But in terms of the fluidity, I thought, I always remember that they couldn't get the key in the gate and all that tension and that. But, you were talking about massive hardship that people in Gibraltar had gone through for 16 years. It's not the same thing. I mean, a lot of people have houses there already and so forth. Life won't change so much for a lot of people immediately.
I think Sergio Bassano said last night that it would really take the first 6 months to see how the dust settles, at least.
Yes, I would think so.
I mean, there were fears, weren't there, in 1985, what an open frontier would mean security-wise. So I can see why those concerns are here today. When we interviewed the Chief Minister about how much of the frontier will actually be open, I think he said it's actually only 178 metres because you've got the fencing covering, you know, the commercial area and where the fuel storage is, and you've got the MOD installation on the western side. So it's only about 178 metres. And then, of course, with the design of the new frontier, you're going to have the tourist office there, you're going to have trees and telephone boxes, and it's not going to be a huge area where you can just, you know, pour in. I think it will still be chunks of controllable
Psychologically, we've been a gated community, and this happens to people who live in Sotogrande. When they were going to take the gate off, I gather, people got a bit upset or whatever. I think the main thing would be the cooperation between the police on both sides, because most things are done through intelligence anyway. So if you've got a good cooperation and sufficient policing, the issue shouldn't be too difficult.
Some information about Pedro Sanchez. He's landed in Malaga and then he caught a helicopter which dropped him off at Algeciras Hospital, we are learning from our man on the ground, Kevin Ruiz, by the way, who is extremely well. We've had a lot of messages throughout the night asking about his well-being. We saw him being jostled quite strongly there by some very enthusiastic young Spanish people.
Football fans.
They were football fans. They were over. They didn't look aggressive. They were just overly enthusiastic, and we had to pull him out, pull our cameraman out. But the Guardia Civil checked on them, checked on the outside broadcast van that was parked in La Línea, and everything was fine. And Kevin is absolutely fine.
It was reassuring to hear as well that the Mayor Juan Franco went to see our outside broadcast team to ensure that they felt safe and well.
He's, I must say, you know, we've had a lot of interviews and a lot of interactions. You will know him very well as well. Genuinely a very nice man.
Of course.
and a very good friend of Gibraltar, I think. And you can definitely see that his heart is in the right place. There's no agenda for him. It's all about frontier fluidity for the greater good for both the Campo area and Gibraltar.
I believe the car is now arriving with Pedro Sanchez, Spanish Prime Minister, arriving at the border. He's flown into Malaga. Then, as you said, Ross taken a helicopter ride to Algeciras.
And you can look at the motorcade. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8,
10. I think you count up to 10.
Yeah. Here they come.
I mean, is this one of those moments where the symbolism is actually almost as important as the substance here?
It is, and I mean, it's also a recognition of the work that's gone into building a positive relationship with the PSOE government, particularly at the Chief Minister's level, and, you know, the investment in trying to get through all the difficulties that you have over a long period of time now. So this is, you know, this is a paying off a lot of effort.
Saw the Spanish Foreign Minister there. Mr. Alvarez is there. And there's Pedro Sanchez meeting Juan Franco, the mayor of La Línea.
If you are tuned in on GBC television, this really is history in the making. We are also live on Radio Gibraltar.
It is. So Pedro Sanchez is just going through a greeting with
a long list.
Mayors. These are the mayors and the councillors of the Campo de Gibraltar, as well as the Mancomunidad de Municipios. And
one final handshake before the Chief Minister, Fabian Bigardo.
Yeah.
Not just a handshake, but an embrace.
Yes. They've met quite a lot recently. There's
Deputy Chief Minister Joseph Garcia.
A friendship between them now. A long-established relationship. Again, something new, Dominic Searle.
Well, you know, I mean, Joseph, of course, was always the litmus test in all these discussions and that. So, I mean, there was always a reference point that I think whenever, you know, Gibraltar and Spain were talking about something, Joseph would be a sort of very firm, solid voice, reminding everyone of the values, as it were.
They are now walking towards the gates, where the gates were. We have the Chief Minister, Deputy Chief Minister, Pedro Sanchez, Spanish Prime Minister Juan Franco and Senor Alvarez.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens now. Something very symbolic is likely to happen.
It's still unknown.
I think they're walking together is actually
Yes.
about as symbolic as you're going to get, isn't it?
There you go, the backdrop
Comfortably,
of the rock in the background.
I mean, we've been discussing documentaries that we've been playing about the closed frontiers. One day there will be documentaries with this footage.
We have to remember this is all going on with the backdrop of people who are stuck at the airport. This is the practicalities of being part of Schengen. Well, we're not part of Schengen, we give access to Schengen. Someone says they've been stuck at the EasyJet flight for over an hour, as we are not allowed to leave, but that's probably due to security. Security is extremely tight, as we can see.
This, of course, is ceremony. We saw it last night at the border as well, at those moments when we had the band playing too.
Yeah. So we're just being told that the man who was standing next to the chief minister, who shook Pedro Sanchez's hand before he shook Fabian Picardo's hand, is actually the UK ambassador in Madrid, Alex Ellis. So a big moment.
Incredible footage. Drone footage as well, just capturing that bird's eye view of this very significant moment. The Chief Minister and Deputy Chief Minister seem to be crossing into the Gibraltar side now. They're walking across, leaving the Spanish delegation on their side.
You can see the gate still there, Kelly.
There, but I believe it's been taken off its hinges.
Yeah.
It's kind of propped up against the wall.
So I think something is going to happen now.
The Chief Minister is reaching towards that gate.
And looking over on the Spanish side, so possibly Pedro Sanchez doing the same on the Spanish side.
Perhaps the crane is going to remove the gate.
He's removed a screw of sorts.
It's all very symbolic.
It has to be because of the meaning, the gate. It's not just a gate.
It carries so much weight behind it.
And it looks like the gate is coming out.
So there is a crane lifting the gates, which were removed earlier off their hinges, and now they're being carried up. Beautiful shot of the Rock of Gibraltar with our flags flying high in the background. And a round of applause from the Spanish delegation as well.
I wonder who that screw went to, Kellyanne.
Maybe it will rest on the Chief Minister's bedside table as a paperweight.
I thought maybe it might be a gift to Pedro Sanchez, but he doesn't seem to be holding anything.
Now, the Chief Minister did say last night that he'd run out of tears, but I imagine this is also quite the emotional moment.
Yeah, that's hard for Chief Minister. He's got quite a few tears there. We've known over the years he gets quite emotional, doesn't he? But like everyone else here, it is a very emotional moment. And I imagine people at home are feeling the emotion as well, seeing this.
Of course.
Some very sad and concerned, and some very happy and excited about what the future brings.
I think that's what we've been hearing in the last 24 hours, that mixture of emotions. Fear, excitement,
snipers on the roof there.
High security snipers on the roof, protecting the area. International press, of course, covering the event, and another embrace between the Chief Minister and
There's
the Spanish
a bit of a
Premier.
bromance between the two premiers, Dominic. So we haven't seen that before.
And a round of applause from both sides. Pedro Sanchez and Fabian Picardo side by side applauding.
It's the most positive EU story for a long time.
Yes.
I mean, you've got to, look at everything else. And of course, it reawakes Hassan's own idea that the Gibraltar issue could dissolve in the context of Europe, which sort of went dead for a while.
And I think the Brits will also be looking at it, those who want that closer relationship with Europe, and they will see this as a very positive thing. It's a positive step towards this reset. What that reset, Dominic, will eventually look like, I have no idea, do you?
No, but I mean, remember that the Brits have ring-fenced their base, which is always their number one interest in Gibraltar.
I mean, who knows? We could be looking back in 10 years and think this is the first step towards the UK re-entering the EU. It could be. I mean, the Labour government...
Twist U-turn that would be.
The Labour government have ruled it out, but subsequent governments...
I think we would have difficulty re-entering with them in the same way. I think we have to create... This is why I think we have to have a strong politics.
But I think we've proven that we can negotiate at the table a bespoke deal that is right for Gibraltar, and I think this has proven that.
Now, as we saw last night, plenty of people in the area, but far more civilised today in the light of day.
Yes,
the Chief Minister has crossed back into Spain with Pedro Sanchez.
The football supporters are probably sleeping off their hangovers from last night.
And probably waking up with a bit of a hangover today. Now, as Ross said earlier, perhaps Pedro Sanchez crossing that line, taking that one step into Gibraltar, do you think that would have been one step too far for those in the community who are still very concerned about sovereignty and other wider issues moving forward?
It could have been, but I mean, I think, frankly, the issue probably for him is more Spanish politics.
His supporters or his critics.
I mean, the PSOE always took the positive approach to Gibraltar from the days of Felipe González, and, you know, they were all the ones who opened the border. They're the ones who allowed more movement. But they also know that they have to contain an element of the sort of traditional view on sovereignty and so forth.
Yeah, but it is interesting, though, that Chief Minister did go into Spain.
La línea de la Concepción. Tiene la palabra el presidente del Gobierno.
Buenos días y me vais a permitir en primer lugar que empiece por hacer una referencia a las autoridades que están aquí presentes, por supuesto al ministro de Asuntos Exteriores, a José Manuel, al embajador de un gobierno amigo, el embajador del Reino Unido, al delegado del Gobierno, a los alcaldes, especialmente al alcalde de la línea, el lugar en el que estamos, al ministro principal, ¿dónde estás, Fabián? Querido Fabián, al resto de autoridades, alcaldes y alcaldesas, quiero, por supuesto, acordarme también de María Jesús Montero, que fue vicepresidenta del Gobierno y ministra de Hacienda en un momento en el que también teníamos que culminar algunas cuestiones vinculadas con la hacienda pública del Gobierno de España. Me vais a permitir que mis primeras palabras sean nuevamente de duelo y de reconocimiento a las víctimas del incendio de Los Gallardos, que ha conmocionado estos últimos días, lógicamente, a Andalucía y al conjunto de nuestro país. Nuestro pensamiento está con todas ellas y con todos ellos, con sus familiares, así como con los magníficos profesionales que un verano tras otro combaten el fuego en nuestro país. Creo que representan lo mejor del servicio público y tienen, por supuesto, nuestro apoyo y todo nuestro cariño. Y al conjunto de la ciudadanía me gustaría siempre recordarle la importancia de la prevención, de la responsabilidad y de la cautela, porque la batalla contra los incendios depende, lógicamente, de todos y cada uno de nosotros, principalmente de las instituciones, y por eso también me gustaría abogar nuevamente por ese necesario e imprescindible acuerdo frente a la emergencia climática que está sufriendo la península ibérica y, por tanto, también nuestro país. Y ahora sí, pues me gustaría compartir con todos vosotros y vosotras y con el conjunto de la ciudadanía unas palabras sobre este momento, ¿no? Esta visita que acabamos de realizar. Antes el ministro principal decía que hoy estamos haciendo historia de la buena. Y efectivamente es así, porque hoy cae el último muro de Europa continental, tal y como nos recordaba el presidente de la empresa pública Traxa. Hoy abrimos una nueva era para el campo de Gibraltar, de prosperidad compartida, como en muchas ocasiones los alcaldes y alcaldesas y, por supuesto, también el conjunto de la ciudadanía nos ha recordado. Una etapa de convivencia, de futuro compartido, entre poblaciones que jamás vivieron de espaldas. Esta es la realidad. pero que ahora, sin duda alguna, van a mirar por fin al frente y van a avanzar de la mano. Se dice pronto, pero hace 2000 años los antiguos situaron aquí las columnas de Hércules y fijaron en este rincón de nuestro continente nada más y nada menos que la frontera del mundo conocido. La gran paradoja es que fue precisamente aquí, en este lugar, donde se abrieron los caminos que ampliaron los horizontes de la humanidad a través del Océano Atlántico. Ese ha sido siempre el destino del campo de Gibraltar, ser puerta de encuentro entre mares, entre culturas y entre continentes. Y ese es el verdadero sentido, o al menos el que me gustaría reivindicar en el acto de hoy, que estamos abriendo un nuevo tiempo, sin duda alguna lleno de oportunidades para los más de 300.000 andaluces y andaluzas que viven en el campo de Gibraltar. Todo en un contexto, creo que de beneficio mutuo, ejemplificado en los más de 15.000 trabajadores y trabajadoras que cada día cruzan a diario la verja, el 70% de nacionalidad española, y que representan la mitad de la fuerza laboral gibraltareña. Alguien dijo una vez que las fronteras son las cicatrices de la historia, y probablemente tenga razón, porque una cicatriz habla de una herida que existió, pero que terminó por cerrar. Un muro, en cambio, es la decisión consciente de mantener esa herida abierta. Y creo que esto es importante también recordarlo, porque durante décadas la verja ha sido exactamente eso, una herida abierta para los miles de trabajadores que cruzaban cada día sin saber cuánto tardarían en llegar a su puesto de trabajo, por supuesto también para las familias separadas por unos metros de metal y para generaciones y generaciones que crecieron pensando que no había una solución posible. Precisamente el alcalde de la línea me recordaba la historia de su abuela con mucha emoción. Yo creo que, claro que por supuesto había solución, solo era necesario querer encontrarla y también tener esa vocación y esa voluntad política de materializarla. Y eso es lo que hemos hecho. Lo hemos hecho superando por fin una forma de entender la política que confunde la prudencia con la inacción, que hipoteca el futuro mirando siempre al pasado y que piensa que los conflictos enquistados están destinados a eso, a permanecer abiertos. Bueno, nosotros nunca hemos creído eso. Creemos que la política alcanza su mayor dignidad cuando deja de administrar los problemas heredados y encuentra el coraje suficiente para resolverlos. Y eso es lo que hemos hecho. Gobernar con determinación, exigir con perseverancia que las negociaciones, aun siendo difíciles, avancen hasta encontrar el acuerdo y exigir dialogar sin renunciar, por supuesto, a los principios que cada uno legítimamente tiene. Como los que, por cierto, definen la posición de España en la cuestión de Gibraltar, siempre alineada con el interés nacional y, por supuesto, con el pleno respeto al derecho internacional. Creo, amigos y amigas, que el acuerdo entre la Comisión Europea y el Reino Unido, firmado ayer en Bruselas, querido embajador, con también la participación decisiva ministro del Reino de España, y que hoy entra en vigor, es un acuerdo justo que protege nuestros intereses y cumple además con creces los objetivos que nos habíamos marcado en la negociación. Primero, en lo relativo a la libre circulación de personas, España ejercerá las competencias Schengen en el puerto, en el aeropuerto de Gibraltar, garantizando la seguridad de la frontera exterior europea y el pleno control de visados. Segundo, en materia de libre circulación de mercancías, se establece una unión aduanera entre la Unión Europea y Gibraltar y se alcanza una convergencia fiscal de manera indirecta que pondrá fin a los desequilibrios históricos. En el ámbito de transporte se abre el aeropuerto de Gibraltar al tráfico civil con un modelo de gestión compartida, precisamente para ofrecer nuevas oportunidades a la conectividad, al turismo, a la inversión y al desarrollo de todo el campo de Gibraltar. Pero me vais a permitir que si hay un capítulo que resume el espíritu de este acuerdo, es precisamente el dedicado a las personas, a nuestros conciudadanos. Porque sin duda esta ha sido siempre la principal prioridad del Gobierno de España, salvaguardar los derechos de los trabajadores transfronterizos que día a día cruzaban esta verja. Sus prestaciones por desempleo quedan garantizadas, sus pensiones estarán protegidas y podrán complementarse hasta los mínimos españoles. Y ya, por tanto, no habrá tampoco unos retrasos en los cobros de prestaciones a causa de la descoordinación administrativa. Y además, cualquier ciudadano o ciudadana de la Unión Europea con residencia legal en España podrá ejercer una actividad por cuenta ajena en Gibraltar, sin discriminación y en igualdad de condiciones. Y finalmente, el acuerdo crea un fondo social para promover la cohesión y la solidaridad entre Gibraltar y el campo de Gibraltar. Va a estar financiado por la Unión Europea, por el Reino Unido y también va a contribuir decisivamente a paliar las desigualdades a uno y otro lado de este lugar con acciones concretas en formación, en empleo, para ofrecer oportunidades a los jóvenes de esta tierra. En fin, yo creo que mucha gente ha contribuido a hacer realidad este día histórico. Me gustaría, por supuesto, reconocer la labor de la Comisión Europea, en particular del comisario Maroš Šefčovič, que ha hecho un trabajo encomiable y que me gustaría reconocer también desde aquí. A los distintos gobiernos, querido embajador del Reino Unido, pero me gustaría singularizarlo, por supuesto, en el actual primer ministro, en Starmer, porque gracias a su liderazgo también ha sido posible especialmente este acuerdo. Por supuesto, al Gobierno de España y singularmente al ministro Álvarez. Y también querría reconocer la labor del ministro principal, Fabián Picardo, en la consecución de este importante acuerdo para todos. Quiero también destacar, por supuesto, me lo han recordado algunos alcaldes, la labor de las fuerzas y cuerpos de seguridad del Estado que han estado día sí día también y que tienen además todo nuestro reconocimiento, apoyo y aprecio en su labor, día sí día también, garantizando los derechos de nuestros conciudadanos. Y, por supuesto, quiero reconocer la labor de los alcaldes y las alcaldesas de la línea de la Concepción, de San Roque, de Algeciras, de Castellar de la Frontera, de Tarifa, de Jimena de la Frontera, de Los Barrios y San Martín de Tesorillo. Y, por supuesto, también de la presidenta de la Mancomunidad. A todas ellas y a todos ellos, así como también a los agentes sociales, a los sindicatos, a las organizaciones empresariales aquí presentes, quiero daros las gracias por contribuir con vuestras aportaciones, con vuestras iniciativas y con ese espíritu de diálogo que sin duda alguna ha contribuido positivamente a fraguar este importante acuerdo, este acuerdo histórico. Culmino mi intervención diciendo, como decía al principio de la misma, que hoy miramos a las columnas de Hércules no como el límite de lo conocido, sino como una puerta que abrimos a nuevos horizontes. Esa es la vocación de la España de hoy, un país que mira al mundo consciente de que los límites existen solo para ser superados, de que los conflictos no están para ser administrados indefinidamente, sino para ser resueltos. Creo que esa es la mejor reivindicación que podemos hacer a la buena política, la que hoy estamos reivindicando y materializando, y ese es también el sentido de este acuerdo. Atreverse a transformar un espacio de separación en un espacio de prosperidad compartida y a iniciar un camino para cerrar una herida de nada más y nada menos 3 siglos que sufrió más que nadie la gente de esta comarca. Hoy el campo de Gibraltar se reconcilia con su auténtico destino, que es ser puente, no barrera, ser horizonte, no frontera, ser dueño y nunca más víctima de la historia. En fin, hoy el fin de la verja es el principio de una nueva etapa cargada de oportunidades e ilusión para esta región. Y ahora me van a permitir que meta la cuña sobre la ilusión que ayer despertó la selección española de fútbol. Porque no solo en esta región, sino en todo el país, la ilusión de ser nuevamente campeones del mundo este domingo está al alcance de la mano. Así que gracias a nuestra selección también por hacernos vibrar, también por hacernos soñar y esperemos, ojalá, que la segunda estrella esté al caer. No me cabe duda de que lo vamos a lograr este domingo. Así que enhorabuena a todos y a todas y adelante.
Muchas gracias. El acto ha concluido.
Pedro Sánchez, he first started his speech paying tribute to the victims of the fire in Almería. I'm not sure if we're not expecting any further speeches. He paid tribute to those who died in the fire, but also thanked the professionals who combated the fire, saying that he was proud of the team. He also shared words over this moment, saying it was making history. He said, today we open a new era for the Campo de Gibraltar. He spoke about future prosperity, moving forward, holding hands, as it were. He said, without doubt, this will provide opportunities for the Campo, recognising that more than than 15,000 cross-border workers, of course, come into Gibraltar every day. He recognised the families who were separated during the cross-frontier years, and he said that this agreement, the treaty that was signed yesterday, he described as a fair agreement, referring to the free-flowing frontier, of course, changes at the airport. He said the spirit of the agreement is down to the people, and he said the people is his government's priority to ensure they're protected. While he was speaking, we did see footage, as you can see now, if you're tuned in on GBC television. We can see that footage of the gates being lifted by a crane. He also referred to this being an opportunity for the youth of Spain. He praised Mar Sefcovic as well and the work that he put into this, as well as the Chief Minister, Fabian Picardo. And of course, he thanked the mayors and dignitaries in attendance. He said this agreement is important and historic. And he said, today there's no more frontier and never again will people be victims of our history.
Yeah, I mean, it was a really, really strong speech there, and one that I think will be very welcome from the people in La Línea. We've heard so many times in the past where people have said, Madrid don't care about us. And I think, well, they've just had the Spanish Premier there talking about how the deal puts them at the very centre of it. It's all about the people, the 15,000 cross-frontier workers and the 300,000 people in the Campo area for whom shared prosperity is now a potential reality. And he talked about having the courage to resolve problems. Dominic, what did you think of that speech?
No, I thought it was very good. He didn't sort of go into the sort of sovereignty and the old issues and all that. But I think with him, you're talking about a unique combination, which is, on the one hand, Fabian Picardo in Gibraltar, who's a GSLP, but actually I'm sure that deep down a lot of GSD people wouldn't be too unhappy about some of the views and way he takes forward. And Pedro Sanchez, who shouldn't be there because he lost the last election, but has an incredible ability to be there. But that unique combination, I think, has been very special because, if you imagine Aznar and different personalities in Gibraltar politics, I'm not sure that we would have got there. So it's a huge opportunity, and I think he has humanised the issue. And again, I go back to the same thing. It is a challenge. We do really this time have to work with the Campo, and we have to see mutual benefit. Otherwise, it will become very difficult.
You struck a note there, actually. It is about personalities. And when looking back at the end of the Cold War, it was the personality of Margaret Thatcher, Ronald Reagan and Mikhail Gorbachev. And it was just that particular the chemistry between the three, and it seems to have been the combination of, Mr. Picardo, Mr. Sanchez, Mr. Alvarez, and various European ministers and foreign ministers. But the combination has been right, and perhaps that's why all the stars aligned and the treaty actually got over the line.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's been a long effort with a lot of pitfalls and difficulties. I mean, I can't imagine what it must have been like for someone like Michael Jamas, occasionally getting somewhere and then finding that the whole thing is, somebody else has come in and is changing the way, and you'd get different background and throw. So I mean, this is a product of a lot of patience.
It was a very pragmatic speech, and like you quite rightly pointed out, there was no sort of nationalism in there, and I think many people will feel he did strike the right note, perhaps not the far right in Spain. They won't be happy about it too much, but I think people in Gibraltar would be quite happy with the tone of that speech.
Yeah, I would imagine that Andalus, there's always been strong competition between the Campo and Algeciras. And suddenly the Campo has the opportunity to become really important, actually. I mean, I think, when you look at it, you've got Malaga, which has massively built up and developed in the recent years, Sevilla, which has always been a sort of the Andalusian capital and so forth. But Gibraltar, with its airport and the Campo, is actually quite a formidable opportunity if you look at it through sort of commercial.
Talking about the airport, we know that there have been some problems there today, but it'll be very interesting to see how flights develop at the airport. What the possibilities to connect with other countries in Europe are.
I went to Norway recently for a music festival, and I had an hour waiting in the queue. I mean, unfortunately, at the moment, because I did check with the government, the agreement we have to use the ID card or the passport still puts us in the all other passports queue. So in practical terms, that is the long one. When you get to an airport, EU airport, you've got a fast-moving one and a short.
But that's not supposed to be the case, though, is it?
Well, I think they're still talking about resolving that, but the answer I got back, formal answer, was that they're still talking about that, and I would still have to do that. I've been researching it because I'm off to Switzerland shortly, so I just want to see what's going to happen. I expect to be in the queue for about an hour.
Well, you report back to us and tell us.
Let us know how it goes.
Report live, if you like.
Yeah, but today everything changes now.
And I feel for those families, those travellers who are in this unknown today. They really chose a day to travel.
Yeah, they're probably completely unaware that today was Treaty Day. Look at the gate going.
Yeah, if you were tuned in on GBC television, we are also live on Radio Gibraltar, but there is footage of a crane being lifted. And earlier this morning, we also had Claire Nandis reporting live from the frontier on The Breakfast Show with Stephen Robin, which was televised as well as on radio. And then she was speaking to commuters. She spoke to the Chief Minister, who was there bright and early. She also spoke to a 101-year-old, Maribel Shakaluga. So let's have a look at that.
Morning. You're the first passenger through on implementation day. How was it?
Perfect, smooth, yeah, straight through. Bit further to walk, but all good.
Hi, one of the first people through on implementation day. Have there been any checks of your passport this morning?
Yes, checks on the way through.
Was it through e-gates or was it manual checking?
It's just manual checking. There's none of the e-gates seems to be working at the moment.
Okay. How's the experience been for you? Has it been a bit laborious?
Fortunately, I was one of the first off, so ask them in about half an hour and you'll get a different answer.
One of the first through on implementation day today, 15th of July.
Exactly.
How was it?
It was okay. Obviously, there's a few teething problems upstairs, so but I think it'll be straightforward once they've ironed those out. So yeah.
We've heard that the e-gates were not in use, so has it been a manual process for you?
Manual process, yeah. But being a Gibraltar resident, it was a bit easier. So yeah, straightforward.
It's the first flight in on implementation day of the treaty. We're just wondering whether you'd had to go through any checks this morning.
So we came through passport control, and then as we've come through to the Spanish were helping us with the fingerprints, checking passports again, doing the photograph of your face, and then just came through, got our cases and straight through. Really simple, really easy. great, yeah, fantastic.
Brilliant, thank you very much.
Yeah, well, fantastic experience.
I think I look a bit dodgy.
Surely not.
Great experience, yeah.
Have you had to go through passport checks this morning?
Yes.
How was it? Was it a long process?
We were at the front.
Oh, okay.
So very quick, but I suspect the friends who were with at the back of the plane will probably be waiting quite a while.
Did you find it quite a long route to go through passport checks and get your suitcases?
No, that was fine. It's just the initial checks that are taking time at the moment because there's only one person.
You're the first flight that's come through since implementation of the treaty. Have you had any issues with passport checks?
No, it's gone very well apart from the scanning, so that's the only thing that hasn't happened. It seems most unusual to see both borders there together, but very exciting at the same time, and I think it'll simplify the whole operation once it gets going.
Well, the machines weren't working today.
Okay.
And apparently I'm the last one to be let through. There's some sort of reorganization happening at the moment, so it's all a bit up in there.
And for yourself, you're GIB resident?
Not resident, but I have my ID card.
Okay. So do you think that potentially it was easier for you because you've got your GIB card?
I'm not sure. They just drew the line after me, so I think my father must have pulled some strings.
Thank you for your feedback.
We have just crossed over.
With no passports?
No, I haven't. Yes.
How do you feel?
Great.
Yeah?
I think it's lovely not to bother.
And tell me how old you are, Mrs. Shagaluga.
I am... am I 100 already?
More, Mummy. More than 100.
Am I?
102?
101.
Oh, 101. How
Time
wonderful.
flies.
And you look very, very well. It's lovely to see you this morning. Lots of changes at the frontier.
Mummy, many changes from when you were younger. You said that you used to come along here into Spain all the time.
Nothing to worry about.
Exactly. Did you hand your passports in then, Mum? Did you show your passports when you were younger?
No, nothing.
Oh, wow.
We just walked on.
And yesterday we came through with our passports and today without. Huh? Must be the oldest person, probably.
Absolutely. It's lovely to speak to you this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I ask
Thank you very much. It's lovely talking here with everybody.
Thank you. Was it something that you both wanted to do together?
Definitely, you know, it's a historic moment and, you know, who better to celebrate, and whilst she can, you know, it's great. Let's please God, everything will go according to plan and it'll be a great thing for Gibraltar. Obviously, everybody's got their worries, their concerns. I think that's normal. I do, but hopefully everything will go perfectly.
Claire Nanda speaking to Maribel Shakaluga, 101 years old. Lovely. Now, I believe Christina Cortes joins us now from the airport. Good afternoon, Christina.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Yes, here down at the frontier, we've obviously seen historic, symbolic scenes unfold just a short way away. But at the airport, it's been a decidedly less positive atmosphere than we've seen just over there with the Spanish Premier and with the Chief Minister. Today, we've spoken to a number of disgruntled passengers. So basically, the airport is one of the focal points of this new arrangement, and it is the way in which Gibraltar becomes a Schengen entry point. And all of this has coincided in recent times with the introduction of the European Entry-Exit System, the EES, which has seen teething problems across Europe. There have been issues and it's been introduced, but we do understand that the issues that may have been experienced here today have been possibly Gibraltar-specific. Problems with the EES machines not being able to read Gibraltar ID cards. We're not entirely sure what the issue is, and we're seeking further confirmation of that, but it does seem pretty widespread information that it has been the EES machines that have caused issues today. So earlier today, I was approached by a disgruntled family member of a passenger, of a number of passengers. His family was travelling over, who had been waiting for hours, and actually we spoke to him a little while ago again afterwards, and they've been waiting for even longer. And he described his experience being stuck in the airport, of his family members being stuck in the airport. Okay, so can you tell us about the situation here today?
Yes, my daughter, husband and granddaughter have been waiting inside the airport for over an hour now, because basically they've turned around and said that they've got no access, what the word I was looking for.
We've been told by another person who's come out from the airport that the EES machines are not working. We've not been able to verify that yet, but that's the new electronic entry-exit system. Has that been the issue, given that been the issue?
Totally. It's basically, but they're not letting anybody through. There's over 200-300 people sat waiting to come through. Two airplanes full of people are waiting to come through, and they're not letting them go to the toilets. There's children on there, there's old people there. They're basically just stuck in a room, and they're not letting them out anything for any reason at all, and it's just ridiculous. I've asked to talk to the managers, and the managers just turn around and says he won't come and talk to me.
So there's no alternative plan for whatever's gone wrong, basically?
None at all. Well, basically, they just put them in a room and left them there. But apparently, all the non-Spanish or non-EU people, they've come through straight away. But anybody that's English or Gibraltarian, English or Gibraltarian, they're just stuck up there.
Have you been given any further information about what's happening next?
None at all. None at all. So basically, we're just waiting for him to come so we can help him get the bags and things like that. It's just ridiculous. It's like, say, you've got young children, old people. It's what explanation can you give? Do you know what I mean? It's just ridiculous. It's shameful. And all they seem to be bothered about is they get opening the border up. No, and it's like you've got all armed response police and that lot, and they're just not talking. No one's talking to you. No one's giving you any information. So, like I say, you've got people coming on holidays, and they're just stuck in a room. And when they're going to let them out? You know what I mean? It could be hours.
Hopefully resolved soon.
Yeah, hopefully. So.
And that has been the general sentiment. We literally just now had another passenger come out of the airport and tell us that it has been a nightmare, and somebody earlier told us it was a shambles. So atmosphere not very positive here. A lot of people who've been waiting for a long time to go through. There seem to have been, again, problems with the machines, and there has been a backlog of passengers waiting who are now still coming out bit by bit. And we've also heard complaints from people of not confusing signage inside, and possibly issues with not having sort of done enough run-throughs. Again, we do want to verify all of what's happened, but it does appear to have been an issue with the EES machines, and it has affected a lot of passengers coming through today. I spoke to some more of them after Richard earlier.
all the machines weren't working to let us through, so they would just take it. And then I don't know what happened where the two people were behind the desk doing it, but that all stopped for a while, didn't it? Yeah. But then when it started again, people were starting to filter through.
Fingerprints. You had to do fingerprints?
Yeah. But no photographs.
I'm coming from Manchester, and the airport now with the police, the new control and the police, the machine don't work. We have about an hour waiting, hour and a half, waiting in the queue. People need a toilet, people need water, nothing.
You say people weren't allowed to go to the toilet?
No, no toilet, no allowed toilet, nothing, because there's no toilet before the control. Terrible.
And what alternative controls were put in place?
Doing manual now. Manual, everything is manual. They stop the machines, and that's what they're doing.
And now you've been able to be let through?
I'll be able to start my holiday now. I lost half a day.
So I flew from Manchester, landed, everything was going well, and then, it just seemed to have stopped entirely in its tracks. So it's a good, I think, I was standing there an hour before there was any movement, tiring stuff.
And were you given a reason for this? We've been told that the EES machines may have broken down.
No reasons were given, no. Queue was confused, so no one had too much idea what was going on.
And what happened when they finally let you through?
It was just two forms of customs, one for Spanish and one for Gibraltar. So, it was split then. Tiring stuff.
So as you can hear, a lot of people coming out of the airport today having experienced issues getting through, having had long delays. Some of those people are now going through to Spain and may encounter further issues at the frontier, which is still quite busy with today's ceremonial events. But definitely issues with the EES has been resolved to the extent that people have been able to leave, but definitely one to keep an eye on in coming days to figure out what the issue has been and whether it's been adequately resolved.
Thank you very much. Cristina Cortés reporting live from the airport. Rosa Stengo is in the studio. Rosa, I believe you've received some messages.
Yeah, similar stories to the ones that we've been hearing. It took an hour and a half for us to clear the exit controls, where we were told to queue this side, then another side if you were a resident. Then they took me to register at one of the fingerprint machines. Then someone changed their mind and we got taken to another queue. It's all very messy, with the Spanish people not in uniform controlling the exit area, and the Spanish border control in uniform just checking our ID cards. And another one saying her overall experience was that she had to show her passport and boarding pass to a Policía Nacional. Usually would be e-gates, but they aren't in operation. They weren't in operation. And to a Gibraltar Borders and Coast Guards officer before going through security. It was a very surreal experience.
I believe news editor Christine Vasquez is waiting with the Chief Minister, Fabian Picardo.
That's right, we're here at the frontier with the Chief Minister, who's having another day with an early start. Chief Minister, we've just been hearing about problems at the frontier. People are saying that there's problems with the EES.
Well, look, there may have been some teething troubles at the entrance to Gibraltar Airport. The EES, of course, is the responsibility of the Schengen authorities, the Kingdom of Spain. I know that they were installing late last night and finishing off that process. There have been teething problems with EES around Europe. I'm not surprised that there may be some here. The volume of people here is less, so obviously, even if there are problems, it should not lead to lengthy waiting times compared to the 4 or 5 hours that there are in other airports. And of course, that's not affecting Gibraltar residents or European citizens and European residents, because they don't do EES. So those who are arriving here and have to do EES would have the problems here, Malaga or anywhere else.
We know that there have been problems with the EES across Europe, but of course here it begs the question of whether Spain is ready.
Well, Spain, I think, is ready now. She's as ready here as she is in other places. I wonder whether the question might better be whether Europe is ready for EES. And if you read the statements from the chief executive of Ryanair and other leaders in the aviation industry, they might suggest that the EU is not ready. But look, it's not a matter for us, it's a matter for the EU. We have the systems in place at Gibraltar Airport, and I'm sure that in coming days things will be evened out.
Chief Minister, another symbolic moment today. Yesterday we saw the fence, today we've had the gates.
Well, the gates are going, and you know, I've really felt that more than perhaps even with the fence, because look, let's be very clear, Christine, we have to remember history. The fence was ours. We could have removed the fence at any time. Indeed, I'll let you into a little secret. During the negotiations, when things were a little bit tough, and people might say, well, we might not have a deal, I would say, well, okay, no problem. We'll remove the fence anyway. And then what? We would have had the run of Schengen. Of course, in jest. But these gates were ours and theirs. But we never closed ours. The gates that were closed were Franco's gates. Today, Franco's gates are being removed. And I've gently suggested to the Spanish authorities that they might want to take those gates and lay them over Franco's grave, so that neither he nor anyone like him could ever give up to cause us these problems again, and to, given that he liked them so much, put them as close to him as possible.
Chief Minister, we've had no gates today, and yet the Spanish Premier, Pedro Sánchez, has not come into Gibraltar.
I know, I think it's a pity he hasn't come into Gibraltar, but the protocolic nature of the event meant that for health and safety reasons he had to stay on a particular side of the gate as it was moved. I had strict instructions as well as to where I had to stand because of the wind and whether the gate might move or not. I'm sure that all of those taboos, if they're not gone already, will start to go, and that you'll see senior members of the Spanish government coming to Gibraltar very soon indeed.
Tell me a bit about the gifts that you've given the UK and...
So what we're doing is commemorating the disappearance of the concrete, the chain link and the barbed wire in a presentation which has been prepared by a Gibraltar artist who will be commending also for her magnificent work, and in a way that reminds us all of what we have done, which is all that talk, all that writing, all that paper removes concrete, chain link and barbed wire. That's what politics has to be about. Politics has to be about getting obstacles out of the way of people whilst keeping them safe. And today, the fortress does not have gates. It's a digital fortress, and it'll be safer than ever before.
So the fortress is secure, all's well?
All's well.
I'm not very sure whether they're waiting for you to actually let everybody through, all those pedestrians. I think we're going to have quite an avalanche of people, so let's...
We seem to be causing a longer queue than Maliadio ever did, so it's probably time for me to get out of my way and go back to number 6 Common Place, move out of number 6 North here and go back to number 6 back in Main Street. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for your coverage as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Minister.
Christine Vasquez speaking to the Chief Minister, Fabian Picardo. If you're tuned in on GBC television, you'll see that the border has still been closed to pedestrians due to the Spanish Premier's visit. I imagine that people will be let through momentarily.
I'm actually quite interested to know how many extra people are coming through today. So the crowd that we've just seen there, is that what the normal queue? Yeah, it looks more. I don't think normally... I mean, I've seen queues on the Spanish side waiting to go in, and it's never been that much. So it does look like a lot more. And my question to the government would be, are you monitoring somehow? Because with the borders, I think they used to have this click.
The border is now reopened.
They had a click machine, and they used to be able to count how many cars were coming in. So I wonder how they are monitoring how many people are coming in. Just for statistics, just to know about tourism and cross-frontier workers, for example. But this definitely looks like more than a normal day's, even though they've been held up for, what, 2 hours?
It's hard to gauge.
Since 11, yeah.
There are facial recognition cameras as well in the area that can count. But will it be able to monitor quite so many people at once? It'll be interesting to hear.
I mean, how many faces at a time can it... We don't know. We don't know. I mean, these are interesting questions that I think we need to find out. Would it capture how many people are coming in, or...
just how sophisticated
do they have other
methods?
Is. But that definitely looks like it's a very happy crowd, a very peaceful crowd. And certainly quite different to last night's, I think.
Very different scenes to last night. Of course, last night, tensions were high at times, emotions were high, and of course, the football, Spain beating France in that FIFA World Cup semi-final probably didn't help matters.
And I think we can see people on bicycles because they can actually cycle across correct me if I'm wrong, but they can cycle across the runway now?
Yes, there is a cycle lane on the runway.
Oh, they always can?
So that's nothing.
Yeah. I thought that was a new thing, but...
Sorry, I'm not a cyclist either, Ros.
No, I'm not either. But...
Well, we do have some reporters on the ground. Of course, we spoke to Christina earlier at the airport. Christine Vasquez is there at the border, and Ian Tri-Clarence is in La Línea. Good afternoon, Ian.
Hi there. Yeah, we're at the border where the crowds that had gathered have very quickly dispersed. I mean, as far as we're concerned, on Gibraltar's side, Pedro Sanchez said just about everything right. As we've heard, there's nothing particularly divisive about what he said. Interestingly, he's referred to the damage at the frontier as a scar, rather than an open wound, somewhere where there had been damage and that has now healed. He's looking forward to a future of, joint prosperity is the phrase that they've so often used to refer to what they hope will arise here in this area. It is interesting to note that there were maybe 400 or 500 people that had come round, and while the vast majority were here just to see what was happening, there was some very vocal opposition. I don't know if you can hear it behind me. There's no denying the fact that Pedro Sanchez is a divisive figure in Spain, and every time that he appears publicly, there are people who will come and very vocally oppose everything that he stands for. There were also people that were chanting in his favour, and again, this was perhaps 10% of the 400 or 500 people that had gathered here. It wasn't a large majority, but it was significant. There were no further disruptions. The police didn't need to intervene at any point, and no one tried to break through the police line that had formed at the street. As you can see behind me, and as you can hear, the cues, the beeping that has arisen. Not only was the traffic held up for about an hour and a half while Pedro Sanchez was here, there's also the small matter of the La Línea fare that is in the process of being put together, as well as the daily traffic that you'd expect on any given Wednesday. So while they sort this out, it might take a while. I think you can see behind me that there are some significant crowds at the border. We're hoping that this all gets back to normal quite quickly. Around here in La Línea, it now looks like any other day. And again, Pedro Sanchez, nothing particularly objectionable about what he said. Perhaps the most divisive point that he's made about the Spanish national team winning on Sunday. I'm sure a few of our viewers will object to that, but we'll wait and see what happens in tonight's semi-final.
Thank you very much. Ian Clarence reporting live from La Línea. Now, this is a special GBC News Bulletin on both TV and radio. Still to come, all the latest live coverage of the ceremonial events following the implementation of the Gibraltar Treaty. We'll be back in a few minutes.
Our world runs on momentum. From the first light over the rock to the plans we make for the days ahead, each moment carries us forward. For 150 years, Capurro Insurance has moved with that energy. Rooted in Gibraltar, reaching the wider world, built on the past, and looking to the future, wherever momentum takes you next. Capurro Insurance will be by your side, every step of the way.
Welcome to the Corner Shop, where expectations in painting and decorating go above and beyond, providing the community colour since 1947. From DIY enthusiasts to professional decorators, we offer trusted brands like Dulux, Armstead, Hammerite and more. Explore our expert colour mixing centre, plus DIY and decorating supplies. The Corner Shop, free parking and free delivery.
Trident is EORI ready for Gibraltar's new logistical chapter. As customs-approved transport and clearance agents with proven experience, trust Trident to keep your goods moving. Providing door-to-door transport, temperature-controlled services, warehousing, and customs clearances. Trust the experts, delivering since 1989.
If you have employees, then you have HR and payroll. And the computer software you use makes all the difference. EasyPay has been specifically designed to meet the needs of businesses in Gibraltar, whatever the size. For a free demonstration, call 200 741 21 and find out more online at easypay.gi.
This is a special news bulletin live on both GBC Television and Radio Gibraltar. We'd love to hear from you. 200 66200 is a number to call us or WhatsApp us on. Now, last night, speaking as a crowd started pouring from both sides of the border, Sergio Bassano said no one must think this will change who Gibraltarians are. He said there will be an adjustment to our economy, and it is the government's responsibility to make sure those changes don't affect Gibraltar negatively.
I think we're overdoing it. As far as I'm concerned, the fence has come down, but the border is still where it was before. and Spain and the European Union end in the same place, and we have not given up 1 millimeter, and the only thing that we're celebrating is that we've got normality, which only shows how abnormal everything that was before the thing. I mean, when Spain came into the European Union well after us, you could walk freely in and out of France and freely in and out of Portugal, but not freely in and out of Gibraltar. Not because we stopped it. So it's quite obvious that our neighbors haven't got round to understanding this, but we Gibraltarians will survive whatever happens.
Sergio Bossano speaking to GBC last night. And the GSD's Damon Bossino said despite some qualms, it was a hugely emotional moment.
We are seeing a barrier which has been so used and abused by the Spanish authorities against us, creating queues and creating problems and creating economic problems and social problems for us, being brought down once and for all. So in that sense, despite all the reservations that we have had in relation to the treaty, despite all the reservations that we have had in relation to the concordat between the UK and Gibraltar, we are here today in order to support this historical moment for Gibraltar and indeed for nearby Spain.
The reservation was that the concordat doesn't go far enough,
yes.
And of course that phrase of exceptional circumstances, yes, which we will look at right, in the future.
Yes.
So
well, this is the thing, that's wording which we weren't happy with. It was somewhat, our concerns were somewhat assuaged because of the letter that we received, that we saw from Stephen Doughty. We received a draft before it was published, but we would much rather have had the publication of these documents before the signing. I think that would have been a more respectful way, given the terms of the motion that we passed. Let's not forget, the Parliament passed it on a unanimous basis, which was subject to the caveat that we, as a Parliament, were satisfied about the terms that were in the Concordat. But look, we hope to be the government in the next year. And if we are to assume office and to assume power, we will make sure that, well, people are celebrating here, we will make sure that we discuss and enter into negotiations and discussions with the UK government in order to have the things which are in Mr. Doughty's letter set out substantively and firmly in the terms of the Concordat.
The GSD's Damon Bossino speaking to GBC live from the border last night. I believe we're heading back to the airport where Cristina Cortés is speaking to the RGP's Owain Richards.
Yes, so we're here now at the near the temporary joint operating base, the RGP part of it. And of course, one of the things people are most interested in some cases most concerned about with the treaty, is security. What happens to Gibraltar now that we no longer have that bottleneck, those controls, and that people could just come in come in and out freely. So we've heard a lot about the infrastructure that we put in, the CCTV cameras and so forth. Today is the first day that all of this is being put into action, and I'm here with the man who knows all about it, the Commissioner of the Royal Gibraltar Police, Owain Richards. Hi.
Christina, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So this is the first day of implementation. Can you take us through how it's been going?
Well, I want to reflect on the last 12 hours, the removal of the border controls at midnight last night. And I want to thank the community of Gibraltar for their cooperation. And be rest assured that the Royal Gibraltar Police are here to protect you. That mission has not changed. And a physical border does not define security. As you mentioned, we have technological security, we have intelligence with our international, local and UK partners. We have our police officers who were absolutely fantastic last night. They were exemplary in terms of their tact and good humour, dealing with thousands upon thousands of people descended to witness this historic moment. And who would have written the script? You know, Spain beating France in the semi-final of the World Cup, and we saw many people, chanting last night. I can say that there were no arrests, there were no incidents of disorder. Our officers were there, as they are today, proactive, vigilant, and ready to respond should something happen.
And you mentioned last night and the scenes that we had with people waving Spanish flags, chanting gibraltareñas in some cases. In the past, some of this would have been seen as provocation and perhaps even stopped at the border. Is this no longer an option?
Well, look, in certain circumstances, fear of crime, provocation, using threatening language, words or behaviour can amount to an arrest. The Spanish flag is not a prescribed flag. It's not against the law purely to hold that flag. In certain circumstances, of course, it can associate with that behaviour. And the Royal Gibraltar Police are very tuned into that, respect the community feelings in respect of this issue, and we're ready to respond.
Ready to respond if there are instances of provocation coming in, taking on the basis of last night?
Well, of course. Look, this week is not only extremely challenging policing operation at the border, we are also delivering additional police resources for the Football World Cup. We have England and Argentina this evening. I want people to go out and enjoy the match, to drink responsibly. Our officers will be ready to respond. Look, from every officer who's involved in this operation today, specifically from the gold commander to the van driver, there are too many to name, including the specialist officers and officers who are protecting the rest of Gibraltar, our leisure areas, our residential areas. I want to thank every single one of you because you've had your shifts changed at short notice, and I also want to thank the community for your patience, for your cooperation and working with us as well, because the RGP is part of the fabric of this society. That's not going to change, and we will continue to safeguard the Rock and its citizens.
And coming back to the security features that we mentioned earlier, people will, it's a startling sight for many to see the flow of people, the sheer flow of people coming in and out with no sort of controls, no passports being checked, something that we've been very used to over the past however many decades. So can you take us through the security features that are in place and whether they'll be able to cope with the sheer number of people who'll be coming through?
Well, there's a number of threats and risks that we've been planning for over the recent months with our local, international UK partners. We have additional CCTV cameras. I was at the control room at the airport this morning to see that in operation. They are patched through directly to New Mole House that we can respond to any incident. We have cutting-edge facial recognition technology. We have automatic number plate technology. And of course, we have our officers who are capable, professional, who are here in new vehicles, here in foot, to engage with the public, to be vigilant, and also to keep them safe.
And take us through a scenario where this might come into effect. For example, somebody flagged by authorities in another country tries to come through the border.
Well, look, the treaty makes a legal provision, for example, for a hot pursuit. That is a legal provision. The law enforcement authorities have a common purpose, and that is to disrupt and apprehend criminals. So in the event of that happening, or of a serious crime happening across the border in La Linea and that pursuit, we are ready to respond, we're ready to intervene. And let's be clear, the Royal Gibraltar Police are the principal law enforcement agency in Gibraltar. We are taking the lead, we are responsible, and our Spanish colleagues cannot take executive action in Gibraltar, save for acting in self-defence.
And with Gibraltar is now effectively part of a much wider area, but with its own comparatively much smaller resources, including in policing. So in terms of sheer numbers, so do you feel that you're adequately resourced for the task ahead?
We have been given significant investment to uplift our police officers, an additional 32 police officers for border and airport policing. We are recruiting. We should have a new intake in the early autumn. We're also modernising our workforce with more police staff. You may have seen those adverts, which will free up more officers for the front line. And of course, we have to juggle other threats and risks and responsibilities as well, such as maritime policing, economic crime, domestic abuse, because those threats still remain. So it's border policing and everything else that we have to deal with, that we are ready to deal with.
And you've mentioned the cooperation, for example, in issues of hot pursuit. The treaty sets up a law enforcement cooperation framework, including intelligence sharing and so forth. Are you satisfied with the framework that's been set up?
Yes, we have our working group set up. We have our nominated points of contact from both sides. And that is very much ongoing. I have a very good working relationship with my counterparts on the Spanish side, the colonel from the Guardia Civil and the comisario from the Policia Nacional in La Linea. We speak, we attend reciprocal events, and of course, formally through the working groups, we're setting up those structures to ensure that we have access to the intelligence and the information in case we need to react to anybody who is our concern.
And in terms of those security features, can you run us through some of what do we have here? We have the CCTV, the facial recognition. Some of this relies on digital technology, and we have seen at the airport here today there have been teething issues with the EES. Have there been any teething issues with the new digital systems for the RGP?
To date, none that I've been briefed on. I mentioned earlier I was at the control room for the CCTV with a significant number of cameras across the border, the Kingsway Tunnel, the Main Street, and they are patched through, as I said, with a direct line to the RGP. Therefore, in the event of an incident being spotted via CCTV, we are ready to respond. Of course, we're out on foot and in vehicles as well. So it's technology plus capable officers who are ready to respond.
We've also heard that the beach cameras may be going 24/7. Well, something that the RGP will be monitoring, or?
Well, the CCTV is being monitored via the contractors 24/7, and there's a direct line to the RGP to respond.
And again, the facility here, more temporary infrastructure for now. Can you tell us about what will be here permanently in future?
There are plans to build a joint operating base, which is a tri-service headquarters for the frontier involving the Royal Gibraltar Police, the Borders and Coast Guard Agency and His Majesty's Customs. You can see behind me here the temporary cabins for the RGP and the BCA with Customs situated at the Eastgate location. That will provide another brilliant facility for our officers to work from, to respond to the public with a front counter as well for the public to attend, to ask any questions, to have any concerns allayed. You can see behind me as well the new SUVs that we have deployed, that were deployed last night, that are being used to support our policing operation. And as I mentioned, I want to reassure the community that the RGP remain agile. We have evolved to different threats in recent years, and we're also policing the digital street as well, with many online harms. And I think the public need to be aware that there are different risks that come together. So from a public point of view, go about your daily lives, be vigilant, take your own precautions, and be assured that the RGP is here to protect you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Owen
much.
Richard speaking to us here in front of the temporary facilities, and yes, the situation that is down here, the new measures that are in place that have been implemented as of last night and through today.
Thank you very much. Cristina Cortés reporting live from the airport. Kevin Rees joins us now from across the border.
So yes, we're here in La Línea, where Pedro Sánchez has just left the city moments ago. Powerful scenes this morning, powerful words as well from the Spanish Premier. And we're now joined by one of our colleagues from Canal Sur Televisión, Begoña Curiel. She's been covering Gibraltar stories for many, many years. Begoña le contaba a la audiencia que lleva muchos años cubriendo lo que son las noticias relacionadas al entorno de la frontera de Gibraltar. ¿Cómo valora esta mañana? Unas imágenes que no creo que pensábamos íbamos a ver en la historia.
Sí, bueno, pasa un poquito como el ciudadano de a pie, ¿no? Los periodistas que siempre hemos seguido de cerca, sobre todo los periodistas de provincia, los que estamos en la zona. Y claro, la verdad que es muy impresionante. Simplemente, ya no digo igual una gran imagen de un derribo, que es verdad que la palabra derribo le viene grande para lo que estamos viendo en cuanto a infraestructuras, pero sí esas imágenes sobre todo del ciudadano. El ciudadano de a pie, sin duda, lo más impresionante, como lo que vivimos anoche, tú también estuviste, y la verdad es que sobrecogía, ¿no? Porque no es solo el hecho histórico, que también, sino lo que incide a nivel emocional en el ciudadano de uno y otro lado.
Begoña lleva muchos años cubriendo historia en relación en torno a Gibraltar, esta frontera. Trabaja para Canal Sur, la autonómica, para la provincia también. Hemos tenido muchos compañeros de las nacionales aquí, que quizá la historia de Gibraltar, la historia de la línea, le dan otro tipo de tratamiento. ¿Cree que ahora con el derribe, la desaparición de la frontera, de la verja, quizá tengan otra perspectiva sobre Gibraltar y lo que es la línea también?
Bueno, más que creerlo, me gustaría que la tuvieran. Lo que pasa es que, bueno, tú lo sabes como periodista, que los grandes acontecimientos un día son un gran boom y a la de 24 horas las noticias, pues bueno, cesan en cuanto a intensidad. Yo, más que creer, ya te digo, insisto, desearía que, bueno, esta particularidad de esta frontera, que es tan diferente a todo, quien llegue de un medio de comunicación nacional se lleve una impresión y vea, sobre todo, ¿no?, por la magnitud del movimiento de población, que pese a que se hable de miles de personas, la verdad es que si no lo han visto, cuando están presentes se quedan muy sorprendidos, y es que es una realidad muy desconocida, muy local, que a la vez es una realidad muy internacional, porque se da esa ambigüedad de que se abarca lo pequeñito hasta lo más grande, ¿no? Y por eso es tan particular, tan excepcional esta frontera o no frontera. Ya digo, yo creo que sí se puede existir un pozo a partir del hoy. En lo que concierne a los periodistas de zona, está claro que nos ha dejado un gran pozo, porque después de verlo durante todos estos años, la verdad es que impresiona mucho. Yo ayer, no como periodista, sino incluso a nivel personal, me resultó muy emocionante ver lo que vimos. Pero yo creo que los medios de comunicación nacional, al final, bueno, siempre la amplitud de noticia, cantidad, calidad, tú lo sabes, la verdad que luego se va perdiendo un poco, ¿no? Pero, como todo en la vida, yo quiero pensar que un pozo se queda, ¿no?, para que se vea el relieve de este punto tan particular, no digo de la península, del mundo.
Fue muy bonito, una punta noche, igual que Andalucía Directo, ustedes lo hacen igual que nosotros, esas historias de los anónimos de la zona. Ayer dimos compañeros de A3 Media en programas de prime time compartiendo historias sobre aquellos que fueron separados por la frontera. Yo creo que eso fue un apunte importante, un apunte bonito, y si nos quedamos con eso, yo creo que al menos ya tiene esa difusión nacional, ¿no?
Sí, porque bueno, tú sabes la cantidad de historias que existen a nivel familiar, tan duras, tan bonitas, una mezcla de ambas cosas, es todo como muy agridulce, y la verdad, yo trabajando aquí desde hace muchos años, es verdad, yo soy de española, pero procedo del norte, y es verdad que fui la primera sorprendida cuando llegué aquí y conocí esta realidad, y cuando supe de estas historias cruzadas me pareció un tema es real, ¿vale? Pero es que da para literatura, porque las historias son muy intensas. Además, se ha sufrido mucho en Gibraltar. Igual esa perspectiva de venir de fuera de esta comunidad autónoma te da otra mirada, ¿no? Y a mí lo que más me impresionó fue eso, la dureza de pensar 13 años encerrados, y a nivel, bueno, del campo de Gibraltar, aunque se tiene esa conciencia de pueblos hermanos, que sí, que creo que ese sentimiento es real, luego siempre, pues bueno, hay comentarios pequeños que hacen mucho daño, y es que se hizo mucho daño a los gibraltareños. Yo no lo pude vivir en persona, bueno, yo nací en el 1969 también, y la verdad que fue lo que más me impresionó, ¿no? Esa dureza, y de qué manera tan alegre se habla y se hacen comentarios, y bueno, esas frasecitas que no voy a repetir porque me da muchísima pereza. Cuando conoces a las personas, les pones caras, es que es Manoli, es que es Paco, es que no es, hay una población, sí, qué llamativo el Peñón, ¿no? Qué cosa tan extraña, tan llamativa, pero luego al final la sociedad, el mundo está hecho de personas, y todos somos personas, todos tenemos familias, todos tenemos historias, y la verdad que conocerlo en profundidad para mí fue un descubrimiento a nivel personal, y aparte de ese cierre, bueno, de la dictadura de Franco, todo lo que ha venido después, ¿no? Ese sufrimiento, esas colas, y lógicamente los ciudadanos, que al final quien más sufre es el vecindario.
Esperemos que se quede en el ayer. Begoña, muchas gracias por tu tiempo, y nos veremos aquí en esta frontera, en esta zona, porque todavía hay mucha historia por contar, y que por muchos años las contemos.
Esto continuará, con mi continuidad.
Muchísimas gracias.
Gracias a ti.
Begoña Curiel, she works for Canal Sur. She's been covering stories in relation to Gibraltar and the frontier for many, many years now.
Thank you very much, Kevin Ruiz. And a big thank you to Dominic Searle, a former Gibraltar representative to the UK and former editor of the Gibraltar Chronicle. Thank you for your insights today. If you'd like to give us your final thoughts.
Well, I think it's a great opportunity for all of us in Gib. I think we're all going to have to work very hard. But what we've seen at the airport today shows you that teething problems start straight away. It's a lot of work. I thought about it when you get more flights, when you have more... so Gibraltar's actually going to have to work harder, and we're going to have to hold together tighter.
Thank you very much, Dominic.
Thank you. And we do have a GBC crew at the airport, at the frontier in La Línea. I believe we are joined now by Christine Vasquez. Yes.
Yes, here I am at the frontier, and we've been hearing Kevin Ruiz speak to Begoña Curiel, and Begoña, as Kevin said, has been covering the stories over many years, and of course those friendships that have struck up between journalists on both sides. So we've seen the main press pens empty out now, and the frontier almost returned to the new normality, but we are still continuing that splattering of journalists, just managing to get those last-minute stories from people. And there are so many stories to do with the frontier. And so the frontier changing today, we saw that avalanche of cars coming in. We've heard the Chief Minister talk about teething problems at the airport with the EES system being introduced. He says Spain is ready, but it's the same problems as we've been experiencing across Europe. But what we are noticing now is quite a build-up of cars leaving Gibraltar. And of course, we've got the fare to contend with. That makes a bit of a bottleneck on the other side of La Línea. So cars are flowing freely now into Gibraltar, but a slight queue going out and traffic building across Gibraltar. In terms of the frontier and what it's looking like, let me just tell you, we've been talking to the constructors who've been working very closely together in both Spain and Gibraltar. So in Gibraltar, we've had Cascais, and in Spain, we've had their company working together. They've been taking photographs with each other, the two teams who have removed those gates today. And photographs are the theme of the day. If I look opposite, I can just see an Asian couple taking photographs of their children. We've seen a lot of people here for the gram, you know, that Instagram pic of history in the making. So there's a lot of posing here at the frontier, a lot of photographs taking place as people want to capture that little moment of history today.
Thank you very much. GBC News editor Christine Vasquez, live from the frontier, and we're now joined by Ian Clarence, who is in La Línea.
Hi there. Yeah, we had a little bit of a panic. Left. That has just about died down. I think the queues coming into Gibraltar, coming towards Gibraltar, are minor. There's a few dozen cars that are coming this way. The traffic seems to be flowing freely out of Gibraltar. The crowds have dissipated in the area. Pedestrians are being able to walk through quite as normal. And it just looks like another day at the frontier. This is the new normal. We'll have to see how developments over the course of the coming days and weeks affect us, if there's anything that's unexpected. But for now, everything seems to be working just as it should be.
Thank you very much, Ian Clarence. Well, yesterday marked one of the most significant moments in Gibraltar's modern history. The UK and the European Union formally signed the Gibraltar Treaty in Brussels, and today, Treaty Implementation Day, we've witnessed scenes throughout that many thought they would never see. The frontier is now operating under a new system. The gates for generations of symbolised division, uncertainty and political tension have been removed. We saw very impressive footage earlier if you were tuned in on GBC television. And it's really bringing an end to an era that has shaped the lives of countless people on both sides of the border. So earlier this week, we did reflect on the closure of the frontier in 1969 through the documentary Times of Closure. Today, as Gibraltar begins that new chapter, we're joined once again by the documentary's producer, Stephen Cumming, to reflect on the historical, extraordinary, significant 24 hours that we've been living. What are your thoughts, Stephen?
They're extraordinary, quite simply, because, you know, one can imagine the situation. One could have imagined the situation when there was talk about treaty, when there was talk about dropping the frontier, closing the frontier. But if you had lived the closed years, then there's a great deal of scepticism, a great deal of not knowing, and I think the word is, well, I've forgotten the word. It's just that, you know, you're not quite sure of what's going to happen. Yeah, the uncertainty and the hoping for the best, but worrying about the worst, because of the scars that the Franco regime left in Gibraltar.
We've been describing it, as a very historic moment. Does this rank alongside the closure in 1969, do you think?
It has to. It has
and the reopening.
Yeah, it has to, because it's part of a very long story. And, when you think about from the very beginning, when the Treaty of Utrecht was signed, Spain was forced to sign that treaty by the King of France. And that is what I think sparked all this Gibraltar español theme. I mean, it came to its peak in the Franco regime. But the story started with Utrecht, and there was constructive ambiguity written into that treaty, which means that both sides agree on something that's ambiguous, so that both sides can argue the point that they are right. Now, I hope that hasn't fed into this new treaty, because then any change in government in the future could start arguing the point about this clause or that clause means this, means that. I think we've come a long way since 1713, but
translation ambiguity.
Exactly, the actual meaning of what is written. I mean, a more recent example was the airport agreement, and the airport agreement. I beg your pardon, the Brussels agreement, and it spoke of the Spanish version spoke about the sovereignties of Gibraltar, which meant the isthmus and the rock, two separate issues. The British version just spoke of one sovereignty. So, look, that was signed by both sides, but they weren't the same thing.
But I think there are perhaps better safeguards in place.
Indeed.
I mean, all treaties have triggers, I think the Chief Minister has said, but we've just been hearing this week about, yesterday, the Concordat being signed, and there's also the Cooperation Committee. So perhaps the guardrails are there, a bit stronger than they have been in the past.
Yes.
But I think one thing that is going to be very difficult for perhaps the older generation is the trust issue more than anything.
Yes, absolutely. Because, if you've been there, done it, got the T-shirt. I didn't have any families on the other side of the border, but I know a lot of people who did. And I spent my weekends, like everybody's saying, at the border, listening to people shouting. I've seen the footage, I've seen the archives. It hurt. And what makes things perhaps a little more palatable is that the failure of the Franco regime to reach its ends were basically because of their inexperience as a modern state. It had just joined the United Nations because it did a deal with the United States to have bases built in Spain. It thought it had the power, the weight internationally to bully Gibraltar, but it couldn't. And the people in Gibraltar had the option of either staying with what was then a world naval power and democracy, which is Britain, or a fascist dictatorship. It's almost a joke. Which way do you go? But what happened was that in surviving all that, for whatever multiple reasons, Gibraltar survived that blockade, and it empowered us as Gibraltarians to safeguard our sovereignty and ourselves as our people. It had the reverse effect in Spain. You have Gibraltar español gaining popularity. It's extraordinary propaganda. One of the most successful bits of propaganda you can think of. Two words that grammatically mean nothing, but can mean a multiple of things. It can mean Gibraltar is Spanish, will be Spanish, has been Spanish, I want it to be Spanish, all that. Now that has remained, and it's going to take a long time for that to disappear, if ever. And I think a lot of people in Spain are angry about that, but a lot of people in Spain are not bothered, and they would rather get on. And that's been the pattern all along, historically.
You said just two words, but so powerful, the emotion that they evoke.
Yes. And unfortunately, last night's scenes were mixed up with the celebration of the World Cup football match. The vast majority of people wearing flags there did it quite innocently. Quite innocently, because they were celebrating a wonderful win in the World Cup. I suspect that the vast majority, 95% of those people wearing red and white, had no idea what they were doing to us by coming in. Because I remember, as a child, my mother always checking whether my brother and I had anything on, wearing anything red and yellow. It was a no-no.
You're wearing a yellow shirt today.
Well, that's why my trousers are blue. So, but it's I know it's a minor point, but it's a very significant point.
Yeah.
And people get riled. I know there have been incidents about the flag being waved. because up until recently, anyone who brought a Spanish flag into Gibraltar would have been told, look, best not to, or even induced not to carry it around because it would cause a problem.
We just heard Owain Richards, the police commissioner, say it's not a prescribed flag, meaning basically they can bring it in, flash it around,
and with any other flag.
No, and I think, you know, and a lot of the youngsters that were there last night, not only in Spain but in Gib, have no idea what this signifies to people. And, you know, they're doing it quite innocently, and I think we should try to make the most of an enjoyable event, as it were, and put that a bit to one side and get on with trying to make this work. And if it doesn't work, well, you know what will kick in? The Gibraltarian desire to be a people and protect its sovereignty. If it does work, then history shows because before, 150 years ago, for example, Britain and Spain were allied in war against France. There was a cooperation at a commercial level in Gibraltar to support that war. And it worked. There was an alliance between Britain and Spain, and it did work. It can work again, as long as we've got the right, as they say, the right chip.
Stephen, let me ask you, I don't know if you heard the full speech of Pedro Sanchez, but the tone of it was very much of like, it's time to move on, healing the scars of the past, as it were. What are your thoughts about that? Well, will it have healed some of those scars? I think
what he has said is quite incredible. Coming from the president of Spain, there's curiously, I suppose coincidentally, I don't know, there's a letter in the Chronicle today that refers, and I've never thought of it in all my life, I've never thought of this, but there's a letter in the Chronicle by Odette Benata, and she says it's time for an apology from Spain for the sins of the past, as it were. No? And I think it's very true. You know, when you, but the problem is that Spain is very split, left and right. They have enough trouble trying to reconcile the past with the civil war. And, you know, it's used as a political tool very often, that the right insist, and whatever the left does in Spain is criticized by the right because it shouldn't be talked about. I can imagine that an apology about the blockade and Franco's regime would be a long time coming, but it's something new in the equation as far as I'm concerned. And the president's speech almost got there. But he's referring to something very new from a political Spain.
Stephen, this is very interesting. We'll pick up on it again, but I believe Kevin Ruiz is waiting for us across the border with Mayor Juan Franco.
Good.
Yes, Kelly, we're here with the Mayor, Juan Franco. He was one of those VIPs invited to the Spanish Premier's address this morning, just a short while ago. And as you're saying there in the studio, powerful words indeed from the Spanish Premier. We'll now get to Juan Franco's take on it. Juan, comentaba la audiencia, están comentando en el estudio sobre las palabras del presidente del Gobierno de España, que se ha hecho hace un ratito. ¿Qué valoración hace de ese address?
Muy positiva porque podía haber dado un discurso, vamos a llamar político, en el mal sentido de la palabra, y ha dado un discurso político en el buen sentido de la palabra, porque la palabra política viene de polis, de la ciudad, y ha estado hablando de los ciudadanos, de las personas, de la gente que quiere vivir en paz, tranquilo, con sus trabajos, pudiendo cruzar la frontera, que quiera de aquí a allí a tomarse un café, a trabajar, a ver los monos, que pueda ir sin problemas.
Palabra bastante potente para un presidente del gobierno español. Habló de cerrar heridas, de que ha llegado el tiempo de movernos para adelante juntos.
Y ha hablado de eso, de olvidar el pasado, de mirar adelante. Creo que estamos en el siglo XXI y aquí, por lo menos en esta zona, vamos a entrar en este siglo XXI, creo que a partir de hoy, y yo me voy bastante contento. Y además, también me gustaría destacar, todo el mundo sabe que yo soy de un partido independiente, pero que si no es por este gobierno de España, esto no sale. Se ha dado una conjunción importante, Fabián Picardo y su equipo ha hecho un trabajo extraordinario. Evidentemente ha tenido que ceder cosas que estoy seguro que no eran de su agrado, pero era la única forma para poder llegar a un acuerdo que, a mi entender, es bueno para el pueblo de Gibraltar y también bueno para el pueblo de la línea. El gobierno de España ha hecho también un esfuerzo, porque también ha habido mucha gente intentando boicotear y reventar este acuerdo, y al final también el gobierno británico, por supuesto, ha estado ahí, todo el mundo ha puesto de su parte para hoy conseguir lo que todos queríamos, que era suprimir una barrera, que hombre, no vamos a comparar a lo mejor con el muro de Berlín ni cosas de estas, porque tampoco se disparaba la gente, vamos, que lo que faltaba casi a veces, ¿eh? Y donde los que hemos vivido aquí lo hemos pasado muy mal. Entonces, para mí, digo, un día tanto ayer como hoy emocionante, y nosotros ahora lo que nos toca, por parte nuestra, es coordinar dos cuestiones. Una, a nivel local, con el gobierno de Gibraltar. Nuestro ayuntamiento es un ayuntamiento. Nuestro ayuntamiento no habla de bandera.
Ahí sí quiero preguntar, ¿tendrá ahora libertad, autonomía el Ayuntamiento de La Línea para poder coordinarse con el gobierno de Gibraltar?
Hasta cierto punto.
¿Te han comunicado algo desde...?
Ese es uno de los temas que tenemos que tratar, porque sin ir más lejos, donde estamos, sin movernos. Esta carretera que está aquí es carretera nacional hasta la salida. ¿Qué significa esto? Que este espacio que está aquí, en principio, perdón que dé la espalda, pero para explicarlo mejor, se queda como está, como dependencia policial, y el espacio que está allí detrás, que está tapado por estos carteles, ¿vale?, es el espacio de aduana, de forma que los camiones seguirán entrando para tener después el control aduanero por parte de Gibraltar detrás del aeropuerto. Y todo este espacio que está aquí, es decir, donde está el edificio que desde aquí no se ve, que es por donde se entraba hasta ahora con los DNI y tal, y estas instalaciones, que era donde estaba la Guardia Civil, y el de atrás, eso se supone que desaparece. Estamos hablando de una superficie de en torno a 12.000 metros cuadrados, y el ayuntamiento tiene planes, ¿no? Y le gustaría poder disponer de estos suelos y también aprovecharlos para efectuar una reordenación de tráfico que permita poder acceder en mejores condiciones y que gente que salga pues lo haga de una forma más cómoda, más fácil. Habrá que coordinar con el gobierno de Gibraltar a dónde queremos reconfigurar el tráfico peatonal para que la gente no esté conviviendo con los coches. O sea, queda mucho trabajo por delante, pero lo que está clarísimo es que nos va a tocar, después de disfrutar de este momento, de sentarnos otra vez con el Gobierno de España y con la Junta de Andalucía para tratar todos estos temas que son los que vienen a consecuencia del día después.
¿Cuánto tan pronto que pueden ocurrir esas reuniones? Ahora también empieza el parón estival.
No, yo te cuento, yo las reuniones las pedía mañana, pero te cuento, mañana tengo la Virgen del Carmen, pasado tengo el Viernes de Coronación, sábado de cabalgata, domingo rociero, empieza la feria, termina la feria, hay que desmontarla, tengo cosas en agenda, y es que en agosto, Gibraltar no sé, pero en España es que prácticamente se para todo, ¿no? Así que bueno, empezaremos a mandar las cartas mediados de agosto y tal, para que podamos ya empezar con las primeras reuniones serias en septiembre.
Hemos visto imágenes muy poderosas, hemos visto al presidente del gobierno español abrazarse con Fabián Picardo, cercanía entre los distintos ministros, el gabinete de Fabián, hemos visto al deputy Joseph García aquí en el lado español, con Pedro Sánchez también. Imágenes muy poderosas. ¿Se quedarán en esa postal o tiene fe de que van a ir más allá?
Vamos a ver, yo soy muchas veces pesimista para algunas cosas, optimista para otras. Yo, por ejemplo, le dije al ministro que el acuerdo no le iba a mover ni él ni yo. Y mira dónde estamos. Gracias a Dios me equivoqué completamente. Entonces, bueno, yo estoy seguro que el de arriba se va a acordar de este rinconcito. Tuvimos otro día al obispo allí también pidiendo por eso. Y lo que espero es que nos ilumine a todos para que entre todos consigamos lo mejor para los dos pueblos.
¿Y con Junta de Andalucía ha tenido algún...?
También. Junta de Andalucía, cuando hablo de todos,
¿Pero se han sentado contigo ya? ¿Ha tenido alguna reunión con ellos?
Yo te voy a dar un dato, creo que importante. Cuando se anunció el acuerdo, el ministro, el consejero de la presidencia, de facto el vicepresidente, lo primero que hizo fue llamarme. Juan, ¿esto tú cómo lo ves? Yo le dije, Antonio, creo que es un acuerdo histórico, un acuerdo bueno, un acuerdo que hay que gestionar, que va a haber también aristas, todo no es color de rosa, pero no es lo mismo negociar con esto quitado que con esto puesto, sin rehenes, vamos a llamar, que sean los trabajadores y demás, y creo que el acuerdo es positivo. Y ahora la Junta lo que tiene que hacer, a mi entender, es sumarse y también poner de su parte para que esto salga adelante. Creo que todos los que estamos aquí y el público de Gibraltar que nos esté viendo habrá visto la postura que ha tomado el presidente de la Junta. No quiero decir que la ha tomado gracias a mí, pero sí que creo que ha mostrado siempre una postura moderada, una postura con talante de querer construir, de querer crecer y de querer que, digo que Gibraltar se integre en Andalucía, por favor, que no se me interprete mal, sino que Gibraltar sea una realidad reconocida con su idiosincrasia, con su singularidad y que encaje dentro de lo que es la estructura territorial que tenemos aquí como un actor más y no verlo como un enemigo, que por cierto, creo que la Junta es el talante que siempre ha tenido.
Juan, muchas gracias. Sé que también tiene muchas entrevistas pendientes, que lleva varios días muy ocupado y siempre hace tiempo con nosotros. Juan, esperaremos, quizás después del parón estival empiecen a moverse las cosas y quizás veamos un cambio aquí en la zona, ¿no?
Eso espero.
Muchas gracias. Juan Franco, the Mayor of La Línea, who just met with Pedro Sánchez and the Spanish Foreign Minister, José Manuel Álvarez, just moments ago.
Very much. Kevin Rees reporting live from La Línea. Now, Stephen, coming before we broke to that interview, you were discussing the letter in today's Chronicle, a member of the public asking or requesting, wishing for an apology from Spanish Premier Pedro Sánchez. In his speech earlier, he did go as far to say that this was going to be a new era for the Campo de Gibraltar. He said that we were going to move forward holding hands, as it were. He did recognise those who were separated during those cross-frontier years. But he did say that this treaty was a fair agreement. He went on to say that, of course, no more frontier and never again will people be victims of our history. So no apology as such. But what do you make of that speech?
Well, sorry, if I could just take in a message from a member of the public as well. The letter you're referring to is Odette Benatar's. And Moira says Odette Benatar's suggestion about Spain making an apology would be a good thing. I think it would bring peace of mind to many Gibraltarians.
I agree. And what was said, I think, is the closest that the Sanchez could go, without actually creating or presenting an official apology. I understand that it would be a very brave government in Spain to make an official apology. They have enough trouble, as I said before, with recognising the responsibility for the civil war and the massacres and all that violence. And even that is used as a political weapon. It's not only a matter of principle and what needs to be done because it has to be done. No, it's a political weapon in Spain. This could be the same. You know, don't apologise, yes, apologise. But they're only saying it because you're in opposition or you're the other party. But having said all that, something a little more. I think it's very, very gratifying to hear what the president said, because I would never have believed he'd say it. And coincidentally, this letter appears, and it would be great. I think it would seal any bumps along the way for the treaty. Because people, as that lady said, it will heal a lot of things.
But it's probably a step too far. We were saying he didn't quite take that step into Gibraltar, maybe for safety reasons. He didn't quite go as far as an apology, but perhaps he went.
He could go.
I think it's the closest he could go, and the fact that I am not sure he didn't come into Gib, did he?
No.
Well, that's
the
an
Chief
interesting.
Minister said it was down to health and
security
safety
and all that. Yeah. But what is interesting is that now we will see in Spain the opposition criticising him for even getting close to the border. Now, not only helping with the treaty, but the issue of him coming down to Gibraltar and lauding the agreement and saying what he said will now bring a backlash at a very high level, and that he's sold Spain out. And on our side, we're saying we've been sold out. So that's always going to happen and always has happened. But I think the reality on the ground is what we're going to have to live with for the next.
And the reality on the ground was very much the focal point of his speech, and he did say, reference to what you were saying, it does take courage to resolve problems.
Yes.
And
you don't resolve problems by building more walls, that sort of thing. And I think it's time to take a deep breath and do the best we can in the face of whatever's to come.
Well, I believe we have Cristina Cortez. She's been reporting live from the airport for us, and now she is joined by Leader of the Opposition, Keith Asapardi.
Yes, we're down here at the frontier where, against all expectations, there does appear to be a bit of a queue behind us, which appears to be because of the backlog of people who've been waiting for the ceremonial events, possibly also exacerbated by the fair across the way. So, ironically, that is the situation where we are right now. And I am joined by Keith Asapardi. The GSD did say yesterday that it's time to make this treaty work for Gibraltar, despite its misgivings, while expressing some serious concerns about the Concordat. So, welcome.
Welcome. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. As I said, you've said that it's time to make the most of this treaty. You do have some misgivings still about the lack of certainty, jurisdiction, security, or trade. So can you tell us about how does it feel on this first day of implementation? What's your first impressions?
I mean, I think there's a level of mixed emotions, you know, and understandable mixed emotions, because at one level, of course, this is a very historic moment, comparable with the closure of the frontier, of other significant, the opening of the frontier in 82 and 85. So it is very significant in those terms. But of course, it's mixed with understandable concerns that people have about security, about business, about people's rights, about seeing Spanish police officers at the airports, you know. Then you've got the concerns that we expressed yesterday about the Concordat actually falling short of our expectations, and that has a real effect, could have a real effect on the decision-making of the Gibraltar government and the consent of the people of Gibraltar. So it's a day that you put it all together, and of course, understandably, it's history in the making, but also mixed emotions. You saw the scenes last night, some positive, some less positive. I mean, you know, we all saw them, and so I think those things will hopefully die down. And we need to make this treaty now work for the people of Gibraltar.
And what does making the treaty work for the people of Gibraltar look like to you? You've mentioned calling for assistance, for example, for those who will be negatively affected by treaty provisions. So what shape would that take, and who are you referring to?
Well, I think that making the treaty work means that despite our misgivings on security or the economics or on the immigration aspects, it means that the GSD and we aspire to be in government at the next election, we will make this treaty work. It means making sure that we have that influence in decisions going forward, making sure we implement, that we apply resources to achieve implementation, and making sure that we target assistance for those who will be much more impacted by this treaty, in particular in the business community and in other areas.
And of course, you've mentioned the Concordat, where your strongest criticism was reserved for that. You've said it falls short as it allows for exceptional circumstances where the UK could diverge from the Gibraltar view. Was a caveat like this not expected to some extent?
Well, not really. I mean, look, we can all dance around the language, but certainly in a previous version of the Concordat that I saw, that language was not there. That language was in the most recent version of the Concordat that I saw only about a week ago. I expressed my very serious misgivings to the Chief Minister on it. I hoped that it would change, it could be altered, that we still had time to alter that language. He said in the House, in Parliament, that there would be no circumstances where our decisions would not have the final say. I said and I indicated in Parliament that if the language pointed to circumstances that was undesirable, I've seen the Stephen Doughty letter, and I said yesterday that the Stephen Doughty letter goes some way to provide those assurances. Of course, it's not in the body of the Concordat. I'd like to see it there. I'd like to see better language in the Concordat giving clearer commitments to the government of Gibraltar, to the people of Gibraltar, because fundamentally I believe that every issue under the treaty affects the people of Gibraltar, and every issue, therefore, and every decision must carry the consent of the government of the day of the people of Gibraltar.
Former GSD Chief Minister Sir Peter Caruana on GBC News last night said that the UK basically cannot say that it can't do anything without Gibraltar. It sort of is, being that the UK has these international responsibilities, it's as much as you're going to get from a UK government, and to some extent it's a question of having faith that the UK government will not let Gibraltar down. Is that something that you have faith in?
Well, I think Peter also said that had it not been for the Doughty letter, he would not have supported the Concordat. He also said that it was entirely fair and responsible for us in the GSD to say that we would like to see amendments to the Concordat, as we did yesterday, and in government we would table discussions with the UK to achieve amendments to the Concordat to have a better, improved document in our favour.
And what amendments would this include? Because you've also mentioned that there are some issues that do not come under, that Gibraltar does not have a sort of say on. Apart from that part of it, there was also a wider issue of what areas Gibraltar has a say on.
I've expressed some concerns on the language to the Chief Minister. There are some very granular constitutional points that I think need fine-tuning, that I think we would want to sit down with the UK government if we're elected to government at the next election and try to negotiate negotiate with them. I'd also like to see some of the body of the commitments, the political commitments that Stephen Doughty was prepared to make yesterday in a letter in the Concordat itself, defining the circumstances, the exceptional circumstances, which are presently undefined in the Concordat. I'd like to see that in the body of it, and I think that there are aspects of it that could be fine-tuned and improved, which would be of benefit for any government of Gibraltar.
And coming back to the treaty itself, you mentioned concerns over security, for example. We have seen this now implemented. Are you reassured at all by what we've seen? We've also heard from the Commissioner of Police yesterday about the measures in place, such as CCTV, facial recognition, and so forth.
There are certain aspects where we don't agree with the government, but on security, we have given them our full support on the resources that need to be deployed to ensure that our security capability is enhanced. And so we support the technical resources that have been applied. We support the infrastructure, the vehicles that have been bought, and indeed the resources that Commissioner Richards was talking about that have been sanctioned, so that the police has more human resources, more police constables to be able to deal with the security issues that we will face going forward.
And just on a sort of personal and social level, we've seen momentous scenes here today. What does it signify to have? I mean, the Spanish Premier has come to the border. We've seen the gates come down. I mean, quite a momentous day just on a personal level, I imagine.
Yes, I mean, I think it is significant. Look, as a referendum baby, you know, where I lived the frontier closure, when I went to university, the frontier had just opened for vehicular traffic in 85, you know, so certainly this is historic. It is historic that it's not the first time that a Spanish minister comes to Gibraltar, but it's certainly because we've seen foreign ministers.
That might be the crane that took down the gates that's just gone past us.
It might be. Very noisy as well. We've seen foreign ministers before. We've not seen a Spanish prime minister. I think his words today are very good. I think that as the dust settles, I think what the best that we can hope for is to make sure that any aspects of friction die down and that we build trust and confidence, because it is only building trust and confidence over a period of time that we will believe that we have turned the page and have a new relationship. This is an opportunity for a new relationship. Today is not the new relationship. We will judge whether we have had and achieved a new relationship with the passage of time.
And what will the GSD be seeking in the days to come?
Well, look, in the days to come, what we will be doing is doing our work in the opposition. So we will be raising issues of concern. If issues of concern arise as a result of the treaty, we will be doing our work. We're going back to the budget tomorrow in Parliament, and we still have a very active session of Parliament to go right through to the summer recess at the end of July. And we will carry on our work. We will monitor how the treaty works, and in future, if we have the privilege of being elected to be the government of Gibraltar at the next election, we will make sure this treaty works for the people.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Keith Asabardi speaking to us here at the frontier as Gibraltar enters a new era with the implementation of the treaty, and saying we have to make that treaty work for Gibraltar.
Thank you very much. Cristina Cortez reporting live from the airport, from the air terminal, and Ian Tri-Clarence is in La Línea.
Hi, Kelly. As we've just heard from Christina, and as many people are wondering, there is a very big queue coming out of Gibraltar. People are asking themselves, why is this happening? The open border was meant to be, free-flowing passage of cars going through. It's not been the case. Why? Quite a simple answer. The fare is preventing anyone from driving out of the border area and towards La Tunara. This is causing a bottleneck because of the number of zebra crossings, because of the number of people that are crossing the road. Every single car coming out of Gibraltar has only one option. They need to come across this one line of traffic, and it's just, as you can see there, people crossing the road causing stoppages time and time again. This will hopefully not be the case once the fare has left, once people are able to go towards La Tunara directly, and there are going to need to be changes in the infrastructure, in the road infrastructure around here on both sides. Things are a little bit messy on our side of the border as well, and that's the case here too. There's nothing nefarious about the fact that there is a queue building up on the Gibraltar side. As you've seen behind me, there's absolutely no traffic at all going into Gibraltar, and long may this continue. We're hoping that it will be the case on both sides. We've got the build-up from the traffic that wasn't allowed to come into Spain because Pedro Sanchez was here. There were restrictions on the traffic, and it's just a confluence of all those events coming together. Hopefully this is going to clear up in the next few hours, and hopefully once the traffic is able to go towards the ferries now, this will not be a problem. Everything looks quite normal as we reported on this side now, and yeah, we're just going to have to wait and see if that traffic... We're still getting some calls towards Pedro Sanchez, which we'd rather not be hearing, but yeah, hopefully things will change in the coming few hours for the better, and certainly once the traffic is able to head eastwards toward La Dunada in the weeks to come.
Thank you so much. Ian Clarence reporting live from La Línea. He was referring to the traffic and the build-up of traffic leading into Spain. We noticed on the drone footage, if you are tuned in on GBC television, that there are still 4 lanes of traffic going into 2.
Exactly. So that is always going to cause a bottleneck, isn't it? And the question is that infrastructure going to change? Don't know what the plan is for that. We've got some messages coming in, if I might, Kelly. Yeah. Obviously, we're a public service broadcaster. You've been calling out on people to share their views, and we've been trying to share them as they've been coming in. This person, Frank, says, I think the Commissioner is wrong in his comments to read the Spanish flag. If the waving of this particular national symbol, given what it represents and has represented to us, should be deemed as behaviour likely to cause a breach of the peace and should have acted accordingly. And the second message is from Edgar, and he says Spain should now allow to fly the Gibraltar flag in supporting events and stop blocking Gibraltar in sport.
Thank you, Ros. We are live on Radio Gibraltar and GBC Television. Also with us, Stephen Cumming, producer of Times of Closure. Just one final question for you, Stephen. The significance of the gates themselves. We heard from the Chief Minister earlier, and a lot of people have been asking what's going to happen to them. He did confirm that the gates, or at least one of them, would be on display. We're not sure exactly how or where. And he mentioned that the chain links and the barbed wire, that perhaps some local artists might make some kind of installation out of it. Just how much weight do they carry? Not just literally, but also obviously
heavy weight,
emotionally and symbolically.
Look, those aren't the gates that were closed. Those are more recent gates. The ones that were closed were taken away, were sold, actually, I think, as far as I remember. Look, we're talking about a century of frontier closure or control. No? The British put the gates up first. It wasn't the Spaniards that put it up. They put it up in order to control tobacco smuggling. Look, it's an image that stays in your mind, whether you like it or not. If you're so used to seeing, and even unconsciously, they imprint in your mind when you go past the frontier, when you come back. The archive footage that exists, and we all know the photographs that exist, they're there. The gates are there. It's a different form, I get it. But there is it's very subtle but very impactful effect that you get when you see them. It's so subtle that we don't notice it. But now that they're gone, and having seen them being lifted, for goodness sake, in that way, I mean, I don't remember when the other ones were taken down. I think they were just cut away, but this was ceremonial, and very impactful. It caused a little butterfly in your stomach, no? And look, you can see it now. It's an image that is implanted in people's brains. It means so much and so many things. It recalls the reopening, which was joyous. It recalls the closure, which was tragic, which never worked anyhow. But those images are in people's minds, and they represent good and they represent bad. So you're bound to have mixed emotions when you see them. It's great that they're going to be put up, because I think whatever happens, whatever generations come and are more at ease with Spain because they don't know the past, that is a consequence that could easily happen. The further away you get from the closure, the less people are going to be upset about a political battle. So one day, the Gibraltar generations won't be able to relate to the aggressive Spain. And the frontier fence on display will help recall that. And I think we as a people, we have to look forward positively, yes, but we can certainly not forget the past.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Stephen.
Cumming.
Thank you.
Well, ahead of the treaty signing, we spoke to a veteran of cross-border journalism and a former GBC colleague. Until recently, he was the government's media director. Clive Galt spoke to Christine Vasquez.
Almost unpredictable. I mean, I doubt if anybody would have had the vision to envisage something like this. No, those were very hard times. I mean, the Franco blockade was horrific. It hurt people not just politically because of the decisions to strangle our economy, but also to hurt people at a personal level, families across the border. We all remember the children being taken to be seen on the other side, about 100 meters away, and the humility and the people screaming across, "Mira el niño, look at the baby," and on the other side, I mean, it really horrific scenes. So that would have hurt a lot. And the contribution by Radio Gibraltar with the request records, where they told people, "Dad has come out of hospital, he's okay. Johnny has had a new job," or "Mari Carmen has lost her baby," or "had a new baby," happy family situations. And then the funerals, trying to get across in time and having to go through Morocco, Tangier, and sometimes not getting there. So there was a lot of hostility, and a lot of people suffered as a result. So that will be difficult to erase from the collective memory of the Gibraltarians.
But of course, the younger generation won't remember that, because we were talking the other day, remembering just how much of a blockade it was in terms of telephones as well. Do you remember the telephones were blocked? I used to get "Se ha cruzado la línea," and you could hear your neighbour talking. But I don't think that perhaps the new generation, the younger generation, hasn't lived that, but there's still that element of trust, as you say, to get through.
Well, there's no doubt that there is a new generation and they haven't lived it, so it's a different scenario to those of us who've lived it or those of us who followed it very, very closely. That we have to take into account. But at the same time, we have to tell the story, and it's got to get across to future generations so that nobody forgets the suffering and the tough times that Gibraltar went through. That mustn't be forgotten. It's like the Second World War. Our parents went through the Blitz in London and they suffered a lot. I mean, these things have to be remembered. But of course, you have to look ahead. It is also true that you cannot look back. And we have been put in a scenario through Brexit, as we all know, which was not of our making. And we even voted against Brexit to leave. We wanted to remain. So really, we've been caught in it, not through our choice. And we have to deal with the situation.
Tell me about, you say people who've lived it, but you've lived it as a journalist. So tell me about your recollections of living this story.
Well, initially, when I first started on television, the frontier was already closed. So I remember the enclosed days and doing television in a very restricted area in Wellington Front, where things were very limited. But we fought for it and carried on, and morale was high. There was good social life. And then later, I lived it in Spain because I went across and I did reporting for GBC for some years before I came back. So I saw the other side. And in fact, I saw more of Madrid and other places in Spain and a lot of Europe, because I traveled as well a lot, than I did the Campo area. One of the first things that struck me when I came back to Gibraltar was that I knew Madrid better than I knew the Campo area, which was really my area. No? And that is ironic in itself. No? But of course, in Madrid, it wasn't felt the way it's felt here. They had other issues to worry about other than closed frontiers.
So remind me, where were you when the frontier reopened?
I was in between Madrid and Valencia, and I did a few reports from there. I managed to get an exclusive interview with the foreign minister, Fernando Moran, which I was very happy because it gave GBC an exclusive long interview, which I did in the foreign ministry in Madrid. And then that was around 83, because the frontier opened in 82, as you know, in December, the first socialist government under Felipe González. And they opened for humanitarian reasons. And he gave me an interview which did an extensive view of how they saw the frontier opening and the Brussels agreement and all that. And then eventually, a bit later, I came back. I felt I had to be here. My experience of Spain, my command of the language, I thought, I can't live these historic moments down in Gibraltar. I want to be there. And by pure chance, there was a vacancy at GBC, and I applied, and I came back.
You came back and then poacher turned gamekeeper because you actually went to work for the government and the press office. So tell me how you've seen things change, because you've been, part of your job has been to put that message across, to put Gibraltar's message across, and sometimes to a very hostile audience. So how difficult was that?
Well, when I came back, I already knew, because I had seen it from Madrid and from Spain, how little there was to know about Gibraltar, or how little they knew about Gibraltar in Spain. I mean, they thought of Gibraltar as a military base with the British forces here, and they couldn't think that there were people like me, a Gibraltarian, born here, parents Gibraltarian. In fact, when I spoke to people in Madrid and I said where I came from, I wasn't a regular thing. They didn't meet many Gibraltarians. And I realized how little information there was, and wrong information about Gibraltar. So when I came back, I thought, we need to get this message across. And then through journalism, I met a lot of people in Spain. I already had a lot of contacts, kept establishing those contacts. And then when I came into the job of media director, then I thought, we've got to do something about this. And then I started setting up an operation in Spain where we would get our press releases translated and sent into Spain through Info Gibraltar, Miguel Bermergen, that you know. And that made a bit of a difference, but it's still a thankless task. And of course, I used to go over a lot to Spain, to Madrid, and meet journalists and meet politicians to lobby. But very obviously, the politicians who would see me were more on the center left than on the center right. And because the center right weren't too keen to speak to me. They didn't want to know. A lot of the things that we argue about, that we weren't paraíso fiscal paradise, they didn't want to know. They knew we weren't, but they didn't want to know. So it was a thankless task, yes.
How have you seen things change? We were speaking earlier about the younger generation. A lot of the politicians that you're talking about were brought up on a diet of gibraltar español. So have you seen things change? Is the job easier?
Well, it's still there. It's not going to go away very easily. There's a strong element of right-wing forces in Spain, as you know, politically, and with what I always call Fuerza Nueva, but the new right-wing parties, the old was Fuerza Nueva, who are Francoists, and they believe Gibraltar es español, full stop. I mean, the Gibraltarians have no right to self-determination. We're on their land. That is difficult. That will not go away easily. But there is a new situation. There's no doubt that there are people who understand it, and we've got to keep pushing the message across. We don't have an option. We don't have the resources of a large country, so it's difficult. They have far more resources to oppose us than we have to get our message across. But we have to do it. We shouldn't stop. I'm very, very adamant about that.
So we've come all the way from when we were talking, when you started, to where we are today. How does Clive Galt feel about what's happening now at the frontier?
Well, I think we've had no option. I mean, we've been put into the deep end through the Brexit that I told you about before, so we had to make the best of it. I consider that if you take into account how awful it could have been with a hard frontier, we have come a long way, and I think that objectively speaking, and even though I'm biased to a degree, as a journalist, objectively speaking, I think the evidence is there. The government of the day has achieved a good deal. It may not be the best deal, it may not be the deal we want, but that's what there is. And it has been a good deal because there's going to be a free frontier. People are going to be able to come in. Our economy would have been very severely hit if there was a hard border. That we could not afford to take. And on the other hand, they couldn't afford to take 15,000 people out of work who live there and spend there. And of course, we also spend a lot of money and we buy a lot from Spain. So I think in the end, it is positive for all sides, but it's not perfect by any means.
Clive Galt speaking to news editor Christine Vasquez, who is at the border now.
Bye-bye.
That's right. It's the first day of implementation and plenty to report because I am on the other side of that frontier queue that Ian was talking about, and I think it's quite clever. One of our cameramen have told us it's not a frontier queue anymore. It's become a traffic jam overnight because there is no frontier. So quite strange to see the traffic build up when the cabins, the police cabins, are completely empty. You can see the fare as well. That's what Ian was saying is responsible for the present bottleneck. But teething problems, perhaps more than teething problems, time will tell. There have been problems this morning, we heard, at the airport with the EES system, and today we've heard that there are problems with customs clearance. Of course, the new systems being introduced, what GBC have been told by businesses, customs processes are complicated, and it just can't happen overnight. So a lot of issues been seen on day one of implementation, perhaps to be expected, perhaps not. We will see a lot of this in the future. We'll see what little things is brought up by the treaty. It's quite onerous. There are a lot of things that need to be done. We've seen rafts of legislation coming through, being gazetted over the past weeks. So we will have to wait and see how it's seen on the ground. This is today's story. It was yesterday's story. It will be tomorrow's story. And it will be the story for many months to come.
Thank you very much. Christine Vasquez, GBC News editor, reporting live from the border. And Roz, a special thank you because you have been guiding viewers and listeners through almost every development for more than 24 hours now.
Yes, it's been a pleasure, and it is an honour actually to report from GBC. And yeah, it's been great to have all the viewer interactions as well. So thank you very much, everyone, for contacting us.
Yes, thank you so much. For now, that is all from the GBC News team on Radio Gibraltar and GBC Television. Ben Lynch is next on radio, and for more news you can join us at 8:30 tonight on TV once again for the latest on today's events. From the team and myself and Roz, of course, thank you for tuning in.